Hey guys. So I just want to remind everyone, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, the full video version of this is going to be available in the description of the podcast because there's going to be a lot of stuff that Jim's going to show and things that I show that are not going to translate well. See, we already got like 5 people here, so I'm going to bring Jim in. But before I bring Jim in, I wanted to just kind of make sure that you guys knew how kind of special this is for me, because I don't think I've even told Jim this yet. One of the main reasons I even started a channel was because of 2 main people, and that was Cutlery Lover and Jim Skelton. So if you remember back in the day, Jim Skelton is in the background showing me a rubber chicken. He is one of the guys that just kind of influenced the fact that I even have a channel. So let's go ahead and bring Jim in right here. Here comes Jim Skelton.
Oh, dude, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, that's one of those things. Like, so I back in the day, and I've had a chance to get to talk to both you and Jeff Smith over at Cutlery Lover. Both great. Like, I know that like you, some
Jeff's
people,
a great guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and sometimes you can be like one of those guys that's kind of polarizing, but like no. But the fact is, like, I've met you, I've talked to you a lot, and you're just a great guy. I just don't know where all that bullshit comes from.
I appreciate that. The thing is, what people don't know, people that have met me and people that have even direct messaged me, anything that's not in the public eye, that's who I am. What I do online, I do to intentionally antagonize people. I learned something a long time ago from a famous person that I won't name because I don't like name droppers. He said, the worst publicity is actually the best publicity. And it goes further than, all publicity is good publicity. If you can make people hate you, think of Howard Stern. If you can make people hate you, the people that hate you will spend more time talking about you than your fans.
Oh, yeah.
And they will spread the word further. So a lot of times I'll get people that'll check out my videos or my Instagram just because they heard something really shitty about me or saw me being a complete asshole to somebody in a Facebook group or something. And that brought them in, and they start looking around. And I've gotten more messages than I can count from people going, man, I thought you were the biggest asshole I'd ever seen. But then so-and-so and so-and-so. So that's who I am. What I do online is to purposely antagonize people. Believe it or not, it's very good for business. And then, like when you and I first met at the Vegas show.
Yeah, it was the TKI in Vegas.
Yeah. We bullshitted around and everything else. You had only known me from my online stuff. Me, you, and Aaron were hanging out, and you had no idea what to expect from who I was.
No. Well, Elliot had kind of told me, it's like, don't believe, like, the whole thing was.
Yeah.
Like, I tell people all the time now, like, oh, you're friends with Jim Skelton. I was like, oh, they're like, he's such a prick. And I was like, have you ever talked to him? And they're like, no. And I was like, how can you make that judgment? Like, in all honesty, Jim's one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to know.
It's so much fun. It is so much fun being an asshole online. And, the people that get it. And the people that don't, man, I don't lose any sleep over it. It doesn't bother me at all.
As my father used to like to say, joke them if they can't take a fuck.
There you go.
I waited until after the 3-minute mark.
Beer and blades, but I decided to bring out some rum. My favorite rum, Ron Zacapa Centenario. For anybody that's ever been into rum, but you don't want to spend a tremendous amount of money, this stuff is absolutely amazing for the price. I mean, it's not.
I would say I've had it. I've had it before. Yeah, it's pretty
really
good. So before we started, so I have a question for you that I want to start off with, and it's going to lead into, and I'll give you the full screen so everybody can see it. But before we do, Jim and I have already talked about this. We texted back and forth about this earlier today. I don't know if you guys follow Tough Thumbs on Instagram, but basically his entire shop and house got flooded out with this storm. I mean, I saw the pictures. His garage to the basically the bottom of the top of the garage door. It is completely flooded. I guess his house is pretty bad too. I'm going to try and start a Kickstarter. Jim is going to help me publicize it. I will get that information out. I'll put it out next week sometime, but we are going to get a Kickstarter started for Jeff.
GoFundMe.
Tough Thumbs. All right. GoFundMe. Yeah. GoFundMe. I'm sorry. But yeah, he's I mean, he hasn't assessed, like Jim said, he hasn't assessed the damage yet, really. But I mean, you were saying his house is worse.
When I talked to him earlier today, I mean, he's down in the dumps because, he's got a wife, he's got 2 beautiful kids, and they can't sleep in their own house.
Yeah.
You know, the whole bottom floor got flooded out really bad. His shop was terrible. From what he told me, the garage door was open to his shop at the time it started really flooding. I mean, to the point where he's got a creek out by his house, and a box of giant bars of $800 bars of Timascus were floating down this creek. I mean, it was nuts.
That's a lot of water.
A lot of his equipment is okay. Some of it he's not sure of yet. He's got to do a lot of cleanup, but the house is the worst. And what people don't understand about knife makers, and I'll just put this out there, people can look at Jeff and go, yeah, well, I see every time he sells a folder, it's $1,200, $1,500, $1,800. They think that knife makers make a lot of money. The reality is most don't have any medical or health insurance because it's so expensive, especially for a family. I don't know if Jeff does or doesn't. I'm just saying in general. But when somebody is recovering from something like this, not only are they down the time to fix what they've got to fix, now they can't make an income while they're doing that because they're fixing the area that provides the income. So it's a double whammy. So he's not going to have income for however long it takes to fix things. He's going to be delayed in his work, so on, and we don't know what may be destroyed in there or not. So when a knife maker is down for any length of time, it's like a double whammy, and it's very hard to recover from it. Jeff is a resilient guy. I have no doubt whatsoever that he's going to bounce back just fine. However,
he's one of the OGs. Like that was back in the same time frame that I started following you, was when he was still pimping. He was doing pimping, and,
knives,
he was pimping knives, and
then he made his friction folder, the Toad.
Yeah, and then Elliot and I were joking when he started making the I forget which one it was, when he started making knives. Elliot and I were on the phone with him joking, and I was like, "Man, I'm so glad you're making knives." And he goes, "Who's that?" He goes, "That's Mike Emler. He's a buddy." He's like, why are you so glad I'm making knives? I was like, so you stop fucking other people's knives up, man. And he's like, that's not fair. And I was like, you got to admit, you put it out on videos that like, I have to replace this guy's knife because now, I've done something and now it doesn't work. But I've seen a bunch of his, I have two of his custom knives here that are Elliot's.
Really?
I'll get him in a minute. So, but yeah, that's the same thing that's happened with Aaron Frederick. Aaron Frederick right now isn't making knives. He had something happen and he was trying to find a way to make ends meet. The knife gig wasn't doing. Aaron Frederick's actually working at a Chevy dealership right now.
Oh my goodness.
Which is sad.
Aaron is such a great, talented, old school maker.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't understand the differentiation, but he really is truly old school. It's like, seeing guys like Steve Ryan or something, very old school, very, saying the word simple sounds bad, but he has a simplistic style that works, a minimalist style that works. I mean, he can do anything and he can work with any materials, but what he does is it's so great and so traditional in the way that he makes his knives. And with everything being done by hand, no CNC, nothing like that, it's very hard to make a living like that because you're making one knife at a time.
Holy smokes, it's happening.
So much, you've got so much time, so much of your life put into each and every knife.
Yeah.
And when there's a setback in your life, maybe it's a health issue or a family issue or a death in the family, and you're spending a few weeks taking care of burials and things like that, you're put so far behind, and that's your income.
Yeah.
A lot of knife makers to this day still are part-time knife makers because they need a job where they know they get a paycheck for X amount of dollars every week or every 2 weeks.
Benefits.
To fall back on.
Got to have benefits. That's
guys
the big
like me, guys like Jeff, guys like Aaron. This is our full-time gig. This is what we do for a living. And, I've had my health issues for the past year or so, a little over a year. And, I'm barely turning out the knives that I was. And in truth, if it wasn't for all the collaborations that I have going on, like the flashlights and stuff, I would have been in some serious financial trouble as well. And it's still not super easy. But, we're not complaining. We chose to do this. We enjoy doing this. But there's a reality to it that a lot of people just don't know because they don't need to know,
Yeah.
So Jeff was kind of like, I said, because he's like, why are you asking all these questions about, he's like, I get that you're concerned. He goes, but, you're really specific about what equipment is damaged and this. And I'm like, well, I was talking with Mike and we were thinking about doing something that might help you out. He's like, oh man, I don't know about that kind of stuff. He goes, I see people that do that and it just looks like they're begging. And I'm like, you're not. We're bringing it to you because we understand that you need the help.
Yeah.
and every little bit counts. So guys, what's going to happen is over the course of the weekend, Mike is going to be setting up the GoFundMe. So when he and I make the announcements, even $5, even $2, every little bit is going to add up and it's going to help. Jeff has a huge fan base of really great customers. I know they're going to help out, but we want to reach a larger audience and try and help out, because I know if I were in that situation, I'd be sitting there going, how am I going to recover from this and not working, not making knives? I've got to pay money to fix things while I'm not making money.
That's the big thing. He's got to come out of pocket for all that. And people don't realize that. Like you and I talked about it. Neither one of us qualified for the small business loans. I got put out of work because of COVID, because I have an autoimmune disorder. This currently is my job. I can't stand in front of a grinder for as many hours it would take to make the knives. And the fact is, as much as everybody's like, no, you can do it, I'm not really a knife maker. I'm a knife sharpener.
Yeah.
I just happen to make some knives. But yeah, I gotta admit, and the whole thing, like the guys that are here all know, I do a Kickstarter a GoFundMe almost every year for my daughter's figure skating season, because it helps offset. And it's just, it's just something that everybody does. And the same people that would complain about that are the same people that are kicking money to other people's super chats and things like that. Sure. But then they're like, oh, here comes the e-begging. I was like, how is that any different? I don't know a single figure skating family or athlete family or anything like that doesn't do that for like the upcoming season.
Not everybody can have an OnlyFans like I do. So
yeah, that terrifies me, but I know what your OnlyFans is. So, okay. So I have the first question for you. I'm going to let you have full screen while you do it.
Internet.
I know you did. It's hilarious. I did. I kind of had an idea, because I was just picturing like a shop that just said OnlyFans and like a picture of it. That's what I was thinking. I was like, I don't understand this OnlyFans thing.
It's literally OnlyFans.
Yeah. So the question I have for you, so that you can kind of get everybody. So I guarantee, even though you're like one of the bigger channels on YouTube for the knife community, there's a lot of people that just don't know who you are. So I kind of know I kind of walk us through how you progressed from TV personality to YouTube to then an editor, and then to being a knife maker. Cause I mean, I've followed that whole progression. I'm like, holy crap.
Oh God, it's such a long story. I'll try to condense it as much as I can. I had decided, I guess it was 2014-ish, that I wanted to retire from TV. I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to kind of get my private life back. And I had moved to Dallas from Miami, because I was going to go work with a friend of mine and start a new business. We were going to start this online men's magazine. It was going to be reviewing all kinds of stuff that guys like: knives, guns, watches, liquor, everything that guys are typically into, motorcycles, cars, all that stuff. We were going to be doing that online. And it just never took off. He didn't implement it the right way. It ended up crashing and burning. But he owned about 30 different watch brands. So I went from being his partner to being his employee. And I ended up managing all of his watch brands and designing new watches and stuff. So while I was doing that, I was kind of feeling not so great about what I was doing. I wasn't enjoying it. I don't like working for somebody else. And I was hanging out with Jerry Moen. I met Jerry Moen when I first moved here, who was, at the time, was a director for the Knife Makers Guild. And we used to hang out and bullshit all the time. And I would spend hours in his shop. We would just talk and stuff. And he's like, he goes, you enjoy knives so much, and you've got such a detailed eye about when you're reviewing them and everything. He goes, I think you would actually make a really good knife maker. And I said, man, I've never made things with my hands before. I don't have that kind of talent. I couldn't do it. He goes, I bet I could teach you. I bet I could teach you. And I kept saying, no. One day I said, you know what? Now that we've moved our offices, we're directly across the street from one another. Maybe I'll come by. I'm tired of sitting in an hour and a half worth of traffic on the way home. I'll come by, hang out for a couple hours. You can teach me stuff, and then I can drive home and the traffic's gone. So he started teaching me, and somehow or other, and I really don't understand how, I was able to do it fairly well, right from the very first knife that I ever made. The very first knife I ever made, I still have, but I went home that week and I designed my first knife, which was the occipital. And the very first one I made was a finished sellable knife. And that still blows me away because that kind of thing really doesn't happen. And then it just kind of went from there. And I decided immediately to start doing that full time, completely full time. Dove right into it. I sold a very large majority of my knife collection to pay for all the equipment, my grinders and everything else.
I remember that.
I shot for the moon.
Yeah, I remember when you sold all that stuff.
Yeah, it was nuts. It was crazy. And everybody told me I was crazy. I thought I was crazy. But over time, I've developed my own style to the point now where most of the time people can scroll through an Instagram feed and immediately see one of my knives and go, oh, that's one of Jim's knives. And that really makes me feel good. So
yeah, you definitely have your own. You definitely have your own. Here, let me bring this back. You definitely have your own design language, like Elliot. Yes. Like you can pick that. Your knives are every bit as recognizable as Elliot's knives. Like Elliot has his own design language. When you see a Ferrum Forge knife, whether you know it's a Ferrum Forge knife or not, it's either somebody that either he made it, designed it, or somebody that he taught how to make knives made it and then designed it, because there's a design language
have your own DNA. You know, you don't want every design to look the same, but there's usually something that'll cross over from design to design where people will go, that's a Kirby Lambert. That's a GTC. That's a Ferrum Forge. And you can tell that even if it's a wildly different design. That's very, very, very important. And coming up with new designs all the time is also very, very important. And
Kirby's another guy that, you can definitely, like, he has his own.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a Kirby Lambert. Yep.
Yeah, it's a Kirby. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have something I wanted to show you, and I wanted to ask you if I'm along. Like, I can't be the only one that sees this.
Oh boy.
So the TRM Shadow, I personally think, is basically what would happen if a Benchmade 940 and a Spyderco Shaman got drunk one night, had an illicit affair, and that is the illegitimate love child of those two knives.
Yeah, I can kind of see that.
I love it. I don't like either one of those. I like the 940, but I don't like either one of them as much as I like this. And I wish it was mine and I didn't have to send this back to Jared over at Neves Knives. Holy crap. We have got I can pop comments up. We have got some, a little bit of YouTube royalty here, a little bit of a YouTube celebrity.
Who's
Somniome, thank you for stopping by. It's the guy I popped up here on the screen. It's Somniome.
We've been messaging a lot lately, back and forth.
So have I. Definitely drop giveaway when you see one of Jim's designs. Really good guy. I've been talking to him pretty recently. He's pretty nice. He dropped into one of my. Is that the one? Is that the one that's so ugly you should just send it to me?
Yeah, this is my little finger. This is my smallest design, but this is one of the design themes that I came up with that I really like. I call it the Jekyll and Hyde. So one side you have it's kind of nice and elegant and pretty. This is a Starfire Damascus, by the way. So I'll put a white pearl scale on there that I'll do a hand rub satin flat. And then I'll go over on this side and the whole thing is fully etched. And then that has a black pearl scale. So you've got two different personalities when you flip the knife over.
Yeah, I saw it. So you guys, if you didn't see it on Instagram, Jim had posted that up, and I was like, Jim, that's just plain ugly. You need to just send that to me, put it in a box. Don't let anyone else ever see it. Jared, I can't find my little cowbell thing. You guys
look at you making money off of this. Where's my
I have some dedicated. Definitely some dedicated followers that. As a matter of fact, I have like 38 paying members now. I want to thank all you guys. You guys pay me to make this happen. This software definitely wasn't free. So,
you know what else is crazy expensive is friggin' external microphones. I'm shopping for a new one right now, and $350, $400, man.
$12 bucks. But it does look like I'm at a racetrack. I mean,
well, you are a little bit of NASCAR.
Turn left.
You got a little bit of that DNA in you.
I do. I absolutely love races. But then the flip side is one of my favorite people on Instagram to talk to is an openly gay rapper from LA. And I love the dude and I love his music. And people are like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, he's great. Like, his music's great. And
you're a progressive redneck.
My dad told me, like, look, people are people. You can't judge anybody by, don't judge a book by its cover. I'm not a redneck. There's a big difference. I'm a hillbilly. Rednecks, typically rednecks are really racist.
Sure.
The big difference is hillbillies raise livestock. Rednecks have a tendency to get emotionally involved. There's an exchange of jewelry. There's pet names, things like that. Evenings alone. That's one of the big differences.
You know, they say never give somebody on camera a chair that moves, and here I am driving people crazy, moving back and forth.
That's why Navy instructors, they tell you if you have a chair that spins, you're not allowed to sit in it while you're teaching students. So if you're in like one of those states, because you'll do that, you catch yourself doing it, and then the students are watching you and not watching. The other one is you always wipe the board left and right, or always up and down, not left and right, because you wipe it left and right, and they'll watch your butt move. And I'm like, who wants to watch my ass? What is in your pocket right now, by the way?
I just took it out, but yeah. I can quite get
nice choice.
I love my Plague Doctor. I really do. What a great, I want to say little knife, but what a great
it's
knife.
Not. It's like 9. What is it? Just under 9 or just over 9 overall?
It's a 4-inch blade, so it's probably about 9 inches. Yeah.
Yeah. I had
we all lie about the inches.
Yeah. In my house, that'd be a 13-inch knife.
My action is finally breaking in really, really nice. It takes a while.
I got one in from Jared Neves. I had the Mayan calendar, and I really hated sending it back to him. I really did. But I did have to say that, like, I wish that the plunge had terminated a little bit. As a sharpener, I wish the plunge terminated a little bit differently, because when you get into sharpening that, then you wind up not so much that it's on that, it's kind of ramped. It's not a hard plunge like a Spyderco where it's going to fuck up your stones. You know, I got like some stones that cost anywhere between $300 and $500. But the thing is, you get that weirdness where it ramps up and you get that smile. I find it aesthetically, especially on a knife that's that beautiful.
That's a great topic we should get into, is people that resharpen blades, and they make these requests. One of the things that I do that I learned from Todd, that not all makers do, or not a lot of makers do, it's an aesthetic choice, is to do sweeping plunges. And you can do sweeping plunges that aren't radius, and you can do radius plunges that aren't sweeping. I do both, where my plunge will be radius and it'll be sweeping in from the full thick blade stock down to the edge. Stan Wilson's another one that does that. It's like, I love people that give me shit for it. I go, why would you do that? Because there's so much that there's the 16th of an inch that you can't sharpen. You know, go yell at Stan Wilson. If you think that you know how to make knives better than him, go yell at him, because I do it the exact same way.
Yeah.
But what I do now is I will come in a little bit more aggressively on that now, so that the edge will go further back. But somebody that's sharpening on a consumer grade, like a Wicked Edge system or Lansky, or somebody that's doing stones like you, I do understand the challenge of trying to resharpen it. That's why I offer a lifetime resharpening on all my, as long as I'm making.
I was going to mention that. That's good, because I've had somebody ask me. So somebody asked me, is like, hey, can you sharpen one of Jim's knives? I was like, you'd be better off having Jim sharpen your knife. I believe that he offers that.
Yeah, I do.
And
that
it would make my life a lot easier.
Because I'll do it right on the grinder, and I can run a little slack, little belt off the side of the platen or the wheel, and I can just come in nice and gentle and not, I don't know if I can really get in and show you.
Well, I can. You might be able to. Here, let me give you the full screen here.
There we go. Okay, so there you can see where it goes from its full thickness, and each side sweeps in. So what that does, let me see if I can get the edge to get light on it. So the heel of the edge is actually right there and not back here. So I've got a radius plunge and I have a sweeping plunge. So when I'm doing this, and I can do it either edge up or edge down, but when I'm coming in, I can just come in very lightly here and then come across for the rest of the edge. When you're trying to take a rectangular object like your whetstones, you're coming straight across that thing.
Oh yeah.
And you're going to hammer off that back end there. So I understand the difficulty. And because of that, a few of my models, I do put a sharpening notch into them, but I won't do it on everything because it doesn't flow with the design on everything. I've offered that, like on my bone chopper, because that I look at as a knife people are going to use the living hell out of, and they're going to want to resharpen it. So I put a sharpening choil in that knife specifically. My Hellraiser, the edge terminates off into the finger choil, so that it's a steep recurve. So I don't suggest a lot of people try it, but it can be done.
Oh,
But
I sharpen recurves all the time. I use people watch me do it. My buddy Tino is here and he'll tell you, I use a 1/2-inch stone and I do it. And I'm not even watching. If I watch at this point, if I watch the knife, I'm going to fuck it up. Yeah. And I'm doing recurves on those stones. I just don't want
a sharpening choil on a knife like this. It doesn't belong on there.
Well, the thing is, like, as a sharpener, I personally love knives that have them, but I can also like on your knives, I look at them, I'm like, if it had it, it just wouldn't be great. But then you have companies like Spyderco that just that hard square plunge. And I'm like, fucking why?
Yeah, you got to really get in there.
Cut a notch in that. Well, I offer it. And most people are like, yeah, can you do that for me? Because then they're like, yeah, every time I strop it, I'm tearing up my strop. And I'm like, let me just cut. I'll cut a little half heart shaped, like a half teardrop shaped notch in it. And then you can just come right in and then you don't even hit that. Now I had to ask you, somebody mentioned earlier, you didn't sell your red bodega, did you?
I did. And there's a
I remember the video. You said you were never going to sell it.
When I don't know how much of this I could talk about, but most people know that Todd Begg was in business with his brother and his brother's partners. So it was Mattia and it was Mark.
Yeah, Mattia.
So
and Mark.
They all had their little thing going there. It never was really as perfect as Todd would have liked it to have been. And then all I'm going to say is they had a very strong internal family falling out. And I remember Todd moved here to Dallas. Now, me and Todd and Mark have been friends for a long ass time, probably almost 10 years now. And we were equally, and I remained friends with both of them for the longest time.
So did I. I like Todd and I like Mark.
Until Todd really sat me down and told me all of the details of exactly what transpired. And I went, you know what? There's no real true way to be friends with both of them because of what happened. And this involved other family members and Todd's wife and everything else. And it was not good. So I love Mark. I think he's a fantastic guy. I really, really, really do. But in that instance, I had to choose one or the other. And of course, I chose Todd. And what would happen is every time I would post Big Red, in a pocket dump, post or something on Instagram, people would want to know, hey, what is that knife? Where can I get it? And everything was stolen from Todd. Is the way that I'll put this. Todd's entire livelihood was stolen from him until he got a judge to step in and all that kind of stuff took place. So what would happen was that would fuel the Begg Knives business, which was Mark and Mattia. Every time I would post my knife, my glimpses or my bodegas, it would fuel their business and take away from Todd. So at one point, I can
see I wasn't as close with Todd as I was with Mark and Mattia, and I really have never been privy to any of it. But like I said, I was distant enough. I could stay friends. Am I real good friends with any of them? No. I mean, I like Mattia and I like Mark and I like Todd.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know that you were a lot closer with them than I was.
Yeah. It just got to the point where I loved that knife. Everybody knows that was one of my signature knives. And I just kind of went, you know what? I'm going to sacrifice this because I'm always the person that will put out what I'm doing and everything else. And if I'm showing what I'm carrying that day and it happens to be a bodega, I don't want to hurt Todd's business and give more business to them because it was unfair.
Yeah.
So I sold it to a collector who very, very, very much wanted it. They paid very top dollar for it because of it being my personal knife and because they actually got a lot of orders because of me doing those videos. And that's great. And then that's fantastic. Yeah. But he paid top dollar for it. It helped to fund things in my shop. And then Todd is going to make me my own custom version of that knife. So I'm not going to be without one for too terribly long, but as everybody knows,
the bodega is, I got to handle one. I want to say I got to handle one at USN. There was a guy at USN that had one of them that he had for years. And I was like, can I see it? I got to see it. I'd never gotten to see one up close in person. And I was like, okay, I get it. I understand. I get it. I can understand it.
And it was cool because the red was one of only 3 that they made.
I was getting ready to say yours was one of very few red ones. There was only a couple.
Yeah, they only made 3. It was funny because at the time when I bought it, I didn't know Todd. I didn't know any of them, and I had seen a picture of it somewhere of a bodega. I'm like, I have to have that knife. That is friggin' amazing. So I went on, I scoured the internet, and it happened to be in between their first and second batch. So there were none anywhere. I found one dealer. It was Arizona Custom Knives.
I was gonna say, if I remember right, that's where you told me you got it.
So it was an $850 knife direct. They had it for $1,200 because somebody was selling it on consignment. I went, I don't care. I'm buying it because I have to have it. I don't really want red. Red is not a color that I really connect with, or it didn't back then. I'm like, but I have to have a bodega. So I bought the red, not knowing the provenance, not knowing anything else. And then I had messaged Todd out of the blue and said, hey, is there a story behind this? I love it, this and that. He's like, yeah, I made 3 of those. That's it. Only 3 in red. So it made it a little more special. And then it became a part of my videos because I would use it as a size comparison against every new knife that came in. Yep. So people got to know Big Red. I don't remember if I named it or a viewer named it. I really don't remember. But everybody loved it. By the way, that rum is starting to kick in. I'm feeling a little bit tingly. I have not had dinner yet.
I haven't either. And I'm 3 beers in, and I'm like, this is going to get fun because we're only 31 minutes in, and I'm 1 beer every 10 minutes so far.
Oh, Aiden has a question.
Yeah, I popped it up there. I stuck it up there. I can pick comments out of
I
the
didn't
thing.
know that.
So
the Damascus one that I reviewed was actually owned by a 13-year-old, and that was a full custom. And it was lost in a house fire. That knife no longer exists.
Oh, man.
The red one was mine. That was Big Red. Yeah, that was that knife, that was a $5,000 bodega. Everything was polished. Everything was perfect. And I mean, holding it, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
I don't want to touch this.
Yeah, I didn't want to get my fingerprints on it. And then the poor kid, I sent it back. And, oh my God, an original Tannic. Holy shit. I could curse a little. Holy shit.
Yeah, we're past. Yeah, we're good enough in.
I had 2 Tannics. I miss my Tannics so much.
I've got to get a hold of Jeff. I've got to find out some info about it because I want to do a video about it.
Wait, let me see it again.
This is Elliot's. This is the one he made for Elliot.
Yeah, that's one of the golden 20. That's one of 20 people were selected to own the first Tannics. Mine was number 3. Mine was the 3rd one. I don't know what number Elliot's was. His may have been number 1 actually, because
I don't see a number on it.
No, they weren't numbered. They went in a certain order.
If I could use it to hold your garage door open if you need to.
I
think a lot of it has to do with 0 weight reduction and the fact that is a brass backspacer.
And I told Jeff, I said, you know what you need to do? You need to make an updated version of the Tannic, because that was one of the most unique and cool designs ever made.
It looks like a sharp. It looks like a big toe. It looks like a big toe from a cartoon.
Well, now you just fucked it up for everybody. Now I don't want one. It's like a big toe with fungus, and then the nail came off. And
there's another custom Jeff Tough Thumbs. I don't remember what model this was.
I don't know what model that is.
I don't either.
I was like, I need
to go to hold of Jeff somehow and be like, Jeff, what the fuck is this? Like, I want to do a video about it. But yeah, we were talking about Jeff, and I was like, I have him here. I have both of Elliot's. This actually is a very unique, interesting knife. It is. Like, it looks so weird, but then when you get it in your hand, you're like, it's actually pretty freaking comfortable.
And you gotta remember what he was inspired by at the time. His very favorite knife at the time back then was the Hoback Quayback. When Jake was making only custom, there was never a mid-tech back then. It was only customs.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Jeff had one of the original Quaybacks. He had one before I did. So at that time, it was Quaybacks. It was these overbuilt knives. Direware was really coming into their own at that time. Yeah. So Jeff wanted to make something that was beefy and solid and sturdy and crazy.
Oh yeah, he did.
His stuff nowadays really isn't like that. He'll do something like that every now and then, but most of his stuff is a little bit more elegant.
Most of his stuff is more like this. It's a little bit light. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is still overbuilt. Like, this is insane. But I'm looking at it and people are like, I was like, I look in there and I was like, they're like, what's the stop pin? And I was like, I'm pretty sure it's a drill bit. Like it's the shank off of a drill bit that has been ground off and nailed in there. And I was like, but yeah, it's this, like seeing this and going, this takes you back to like the Wild West days of the internet and the knife review channels. And it was your channel. And
it's funny because Jeff was both Jeffs, him and Cutlery Lover, were two of my inspirations for getting started in making my YouTube channel. And that's been 9 years now. We're going into 9 years now that I've been doing that.
Yeah. And like I said, I've been doing it for like, I got into it like, the thing was, so the weirdness is like, I was overseas and everybody's like, oh, you were in Japan. I was in Japan for like 13 years. And I was in the military. People were like, oh, in Japan. And I bet you had all this. And I was like, what you forget is being in the military, and especially being in the military overseas, is a lot like being in prison. Like you're cut off from everything that's happening anywhere, like movies, there are so many TV shows that people are like, oh, you never watched that? I was like, I never saw an episode, not a single episode of so many of these things. But then you've got like, you know, I came back to the States, and that's when I get into YouTube, and I was like, what is YouTube? I didn't have internet when I was like, literally did not have internet in a house very much, like any capacity, till I got back to the States after being overseas for 13 years. And so I got into YouTube and started watching stuff, and I'm like, oh, I like knives. And I'd gotten into sharpening and taught myself how to do the convex edges on things and the radius edges. And I get back stateside, and then they're like, oh, there's this huge YouTube community ish. It's much larger now, but I was like, and then I found your channel, and I found Jeff's pimping stuff, and I found some of Elliot's stuff later with my daughter and all that. And I was like, holy crap. So yeah, like Jeff got you into it, and then you got me into it. And now hopefully someone out there is going to be like, oh, I started my YouTube channel because I watched Mike's videos and things like that. It's just like that. It kind of just keeps cascading forward.
It's fun to get those messages. And I kind of figured out a lot of them on my own, because all of a sudden people started using carbon fiber backdrops for their videos. I'm like, gee, I wonder where they got that.
Yeah, right. I never wanted my channel to be like that. So Michael R asks, yeah,
I'm like, I haven't used the carbon fiber in like a couple of years. I'm like, I'm changing it up. I got to do something. And now I'm doing this first person. I'm sorry, the camera on me when I open my videos now, because I want to kind of freshen things up a little bit, but I still do my first person views and everything. But you know, when you talk about being in Japan now, it's time for me to ask you questions. Oh, wait. Okay. Now you popped up.
We have a question here. So Jim, have to ask. This is from Michael R. As a horror fan, is that a custom Michael Myers mask?
Yeah, this was the one that they made directly from the mold of the actual mask that was worn in the Halloween 2018. So that is a direct replica that was made from that mold. It was made from that mask. So when I saw that, I absolutely had to have it. I'm a huge horror fan.
The James T. Kirk mask that they used?
No, that was the original Halloween mask.
Oh, okay.
From 1978. That was a different mask. It's aged and it's decayed because it was.
Okay.
Came back to his old house and pulled it out. Yeah,
I got you.
No, they brought it to him at the insane asylum, and then he killed them in the gas station. But yeah, that's actually a replica from that mold. I actually wore it when COVID very first started, March 2020, and they said wear masks. I decided to be a smartass, and I posted the video on my Instagram. I took a filter and put it inside of the mask, and I wore the mask grocery shopping.
I saw it. I remember you posted it. I was like, Jim,
I freaked so many people out. It was ridiculous. I'm in Texas. I'm lucky I didn't get shot doing it. I did it once and never did it again. Because people went, you're lucky your ass didn't get shot. I'm like, you know what? You got a damn good point.
You got a good point. I'm in Texas now.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's been sitting on that styrofoam head ever since. But back to what I was saying. To ask you a question, a lot of people will talk about doing traditional knife edges, knife sharpening with Japanese whetstones, but you actually began doing it in Japan.
Yeah, I did.
So tell me about that. What was it like learning that in Japan from Japanese people? And
I learned it from my father-in-law. And so, I mean, I bought I bought a water stone. I had wet stones, like the oil stones, like Arkansas stones and things like that. Now, I think that they'll, as long as you're drinking out of glass, we're good. That's why I use a koozie, is because if
I've got
if
my
you
Harley glass.
Yeah, nice. And so I had sharpened for years growing up on a farm. We always used on the farm. We always used the Arkansas stones with oil, and it's a completely different thing. And so when I met my wife's father, he's a master carpenter, and he sharpens all his own hand tools and kitchen knives and everything. And talk about every metal item in a house being terrifying sharp. And so I got a water stone. He watched me sharpening like I was using an Arkansas stone. He's like, no, stop, come here. And he showed me, he's like, soak it in water. And he goes, tomorrow. And I was like, what? I was like, yeah, tomorrow. 明日でもこれね、私はすごい辛口. It's dry. It's very dry. You have to soak it. And I was like, okay, I got to wait till tomorrow.
Karakuchi.
Good.
Keep the kuchi soaked.
Karakuchi is super dry. That's as a matter of fact, that's what they say when they drink the Asahi beer, like Karakuchi, because it's Asahi super dry. And he was like, yeah, you got to soak it in water. And then he was showing me how you actually use it to build a slurry, and explained all these things. And then showed me how you can do it and how you can get the convex edges and all those things. And it was just something I got it. And then because I took Japanese sword martial arts, and that's the origin of the background. And so Japanese swords are not sharpened. They're polished all the way from the origin of the edge, the apex, all the way back. And then even onto the spine, they're hand polished. So you don't actually sharpen one of those. And I saw that that convex edge, and I knew how well it cuts because I'd already cut tatami mat and bamboo and things like that in the course of studying. And I was like, so I watched videos. And at the time, like I said, YouTube really wasn't something you could do in Japan, but you could find videos online. If you had even as slow as our dial-up connection was, you could find videos, download them, and then watch, and you would see these things. And I was like, well, there's got to be a way for you to duplicate that in miniature. And so I just got a bunch of cheap knives and some wet water stones. And right now I use the Edge Pro aluminum oxide water stones, which are really, really good. And the the Edge Pro diamond matrix water stones for really harder steels and things like that. But what basically you can do is, what you're doing is everybody's like, oh, you've got to do this. You really don't. What I'm doing is every time I draw through, I'm changing that angle multiple times through the pass of that, knowing where the apex is by listening.
Yeah.
And knowing if I've gone too far, and then I have to start over. And I've basically taught myself. So as you're going, you formed all these facets. And each time you do it, those angles are different. And so you're knocking those off, and those facets get tighter and tighter. By the time you're done, all those shoulders are pretty rounded over, and you have an even radiused edge. And so that's just what it was. And it was because the wife and I went to a hardware store. I was like, oh, I need a new sharpening stone. And he was watching me do it. And he goes, no, you're an idiot.
Because I would love to be able to slow down and sit down and put my edges on like that, because that really is a wonderful traditional way of making people say razor sharp. It's one of those things that people just throw out there. They don't understand. When you're saying razor sharp, you're meaning as sharp as a razor, and very few knives. Number one, some steels can't even achieve that. But people think about the size of carbides and stuff like that. Like, you can make D2 sharp, really sharp. You can never make D2 razor sharp. CPM
get
D2,
it pretty close. Yeah, I was saying you get it pretty close.
But the carbides are still so large that it's never going to be a true, real razor.
Well,
but by doing
if you use the right stones with the right abrasives in them, and like the ceramics all the way up to 12,000 grit, you're still cutting those carbides. You can thin that out to where I've done some knives that you wouldn't think you could. I know you felt like you were like, oh, you guys with these edges, and you're like, it's so slick, and you're like, and you touched it, and you were like, okay, in your case, I might be wrong. I don't think I really want to push it.
I'll put that out there in public for everybody. When I first met Mike, we met at the Las Vegas show 4 or 5 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I'm one of those guys. I do not like, if you show me a wicked edge, mirror edge, I will laugh at you. Go cut a fucking seatbelt with that. Come back to me. So I've always despised mirror edges. They're great for slicing through paper, and they do those particular tasks very well. If you were slicing through a piece of garlic or a tomato, it will do that. but you need a little bit of tooth to an edge in order to get that sawing action to do a true cut
The micro
on any
serrations.
normal things that you're going to cut, rope
Yeah.
or cardboard or anything else. So I've never liked a mirror edge. And so I knew that Mike did these mirror edges. So when we first met, I literally people think I only say shit online. No, I will say
No,
it
straight to my face.
I gave him shit to his face about his fucking mirror edges. And he goes, now, wait a second. He goes, I understand where that's coming from. And he pulls this knife, I swear, out of midair. He goes, hold this and feel that edge. And I felt that edge and went, oh, shit, this is stupidly sharp. And he says, if you were to magnify the living shit out of this, you would see there's still some tooth left, even though to the naked eye, it looks mirror polished. I'm like, that's impossible. Because that's what happens when you do it on the Japanese waterstones and you're actually trained in how to do it. You're not doing it on a wicked edge. You're not doing it on a belt grinder. You're doing it a very specific way in order to get that mirror polished look. It's beautifully refined, and yet it will still cut and slice the way that it's supposed to. So, and you actually did my Deadpool knife for me. When I said to you to do the video, I'm like, do me a favor, put one of your edges on it. I love your edges. They are, and I send so many people to you because when they go, who do you know that can do really good edges? I'm like, you know what? He charges so little to do it, and he's doing it by hand. He's not doing it in a way that can burn the temper of the edge. He's not doing it in a way it's going to round off the tip. He's doing traditional Japanese waterstones, and he didn't just buy waterstones off of Amazon. He knows how to do them. He was properly taught how to do this in the traditional method. So when I say send it to him, I mean, you're going to get the best possible edges. I'm like, somebody like Elliot, who is a phenomenal knife maker, makes amazing edges. When he says, hey, I got a batch of 50 knives, Mike, can you put all the edges on there while I go and make the next knives? You have to understand, for Elliot to trust someone else, Elliot, who actually has lived to study steels and metallurgy and let me tell you something. He could take a single question and turn it into a 3-hour lecture. That's how intelligent he is on these things, because, and that comes from his parents. That comes from, that scientific mind that they have. And it went down to him. And for him to say, I'm going to hand all of these knives that I'm going to put in customers' hands that pay good money over to Mike to put an edge on these things after I've put all this time and sweat into making them. There's something to be said for your quality and your skill set. And I truly admire what you do. I don't have a lot of respect for knife sharpeners, because a lot of them try to act like they're knife makers. And you have made that step, and you have made knives, and you've done very well at it. But a lot of them just think because they put an edge on a knife, they're as good as a knife maker, and they don't understand what it takes.
Well,
I have a great respect and admiration for what you do, and that's a great example. To have the balls to sharpen a Rockstead, and you did it well.
Yeah, and I'm actually hand polishing out scratches on the flat. There was some fairly heavy scratches that I don't know where they came from. I talked to the customer. I'm not done polishing this side yet, but this side, as you can see, has been polished on my stones.
Yeah,
by hand. That side you can see is not quite as polished. I'm polishing that on a 12,000 grit stone, and then using.
Yeah, I would tell anybody, if you have any knife, whether it's a $35 Spyderco or a $4,000 custom that the maker doesn't, I would always say send back to the maker. But if the maker doesn't have time to do it, send it to Mike. I can give you my personal assessment that is one of the finest edges I have ever had. And it literally cut everything I ever asked it to. There was no limitation
for a long time, right? Not like, because the problem I have with V edges is they don't hold as long as a convex. They don't.
No, that one held up for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually know who has your Deadpool knife now.
Yep.
And I just recently had to sharpen it again. He's like,
really? Wow.
They're like, your edges last forever. You should probably stop doing that so that people will have to send stuff back. And we got another super chat. Aiden, thank you very much.
Oh, that means we have to take a drink. Is like
I mean, yeah, we could do that. I mean, I'm good with that. I'll have to open another one. I'm glad I put beers in that cooler. Yeah, something like that. Hey, we're only 49 minutes in, and this is scheduled for 2 hours.
Because you and I can easily talk for 2 hours.
We're on my third question. I have a whole page full of questions.
Okay, go ahead.
So we've already talked about your knives. And I mean, I have heard other people say it. The person that I heard exemplify it the best was TJ. That is TJ Marfione. That's Tony Jr. From Heretic Knives. And he said the exact same thing that I was thinking. It's so impressive to watch someone step into something and then just progress so fast and so rapidly. And I mean, it actually speaks to the skills, not just the skill set, but your determination and everything. That's something you really wanted to do. And he actually said it the best. He's like, I've never seen anyone go into it and then that quickly.
Wait, he said that about me?
Yeah, that's at Vegas. We were. Because remember, his table was right across from yours.
Yeah, he was right across from me. Yeah,
and he was telling you that, and I was like, I can't. He's like, I was like, I can't put it any better. So
I'll be honest. I'm very happy with the progression I had made because coming up in November, I'll be doing this for 5 years. I was happy with the progression I made the first 3 or 4 years, but honestly, it's the last 2 years that I think has changed a lot for me because I spent a lot of time in Todd's shop, and Todd is one of those guys where he is now the president of the Knife Makers Guild, by the way.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew he was a big presence in the Knife Makers Guild, but I didn't know he was the president.
It just happened a few months ago. He's one of those guys where he will sit down and critique your knives and help you, but he wants you to actually take what he says and apply that. And I listened to everything he said. I would sit there in the shop and bullshit with him for a half a day and watch him hand polishing for 6 hours, nothing but the one bevel on one side. People have to realize he'll put as much as 100 hours into a polished blade.
Yeah.
There's that much handwork.
Which is why I don't do hand polished blades very often.
And my finishes weren't there. I was doing 400, 600 grit satins and stuff like that. And he says, the more you put into it, when those knives get out there in people's hands, the more they're going to appreciate it. And I took that to heart. And a lot of times I would finish a knife and I would drive down to his shop and I'd say, what do you think? And he would look at me and go, it looks good, but I bet you could spend another 2 hours on this and it would be that much better. Do this, hit that area. I'm like, okay. And I would take it back home and I would do that. And when I would stop and I would take a step back and I would look at the knife and I would mentally compare it to the same knife I made previous, I'd go, it's that much better. And there was something that Bob Lum had told him, and Bob Lum were very, 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 very close friends. And Bob had told him at one point, he says, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly what he said, and I'm half drunk.
Half? We got to get her in on this.
He says, as long as the knife I'm making today is better than the knives I made before, I'm happy with the work that I'm doing. So it doesn't matter what anybody else says about your work. If you can look at your knife, there is never a time to say, it's good enough. There should never be a good enough that goes out of the shop. And in my first 3 or 4 years, there was a few of those. I went, oh, that's good enough.
Well, we talked about that. Now there was a whole video, and we had your thoughts on that. And
what more can I do? Can I refine that finish a little bit more? Can I make this a little more? I just did one for someone. I just shipped it today. It was a wedding gift that she was giving to her husband. And I'm like, you know what? She paid for just a dark granite finish, which is my version of a dark acid stone wash finish. And I went, you know what? I'm going to make that a two-tone for her. And I'm going to add a glass breaker to it. And I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to highlight all the outer edges of the knife by putting a bevel all the way around the perimeter and all these little things to make it pop because it was going to be a wedding gift. And it's those things that get your customers to. I just posted a little while ago. My best customer, who is turning into a very good friend, my best customer, he owns now 18 of my knives. Today I saw that a surprise, a $300 friggin' pen from
the Saga pen from Grimsmo.
And I'm like, dude,
which is funny because I was talking to John right before I came on to talk to you.
Really? Oh, that's so funny.
John's another person that had a big influence on this channel. You talk about like now you do the face to face.
Tuesdays were awesome.
Well, that was one of them, but I had already gotten into it and thought about it. But when I started to get ready to make the channel, I had already talked to John about getting a Grimsmo Norseman, which now I have one. I bought one. It's a used one. I saved up for it. And I've talked to John about doing some customizing. I want to put my military rate insignia, my military as a gunner's mate, the cross cannons on here. And he's down for it as soon as he's got time and I've got the money. But when I talked to him, I was like, I want to do a channel, and John's a great guy. And his thing, he's like, the best advice I could do for you, because I'd sent him a link to a video. He's like, put a face to your channel. And I was like, what? And he goes, turn that camera around, put a face to your channel. People will respond to that because then they associate the channel with you. And that's my original YouTube channel. I got maybe 15 views on like 8 videos total in a year. And I was like, I'm done with this. And then he was like, nope, just do this. And so I got rid of that channel. I started this channel, and I did that. I turned the camera around and I put a face to the channel. And now
I've got funny, because I originally started by doing the first person POV, because I said, this isn't about me. This is about the knives. And I got a lot of people saying, I'd like to actually see your face when you're telling me what you think about these knives.
Yeah.
That's kind of a weird effect.
Right? I see that.
I'm getting drunk. I don't know.
So Have got this up here on the screen before we go any further.
You're going to have to read it because everything's
Rubicon 81 says, have to say thanks to Jim, because the review of the Todd Begg Bodega led me to buying and loving mine. Just found your channel the other day, Mike, and I'm glad I did. Great content from both of you. Thank you very much. I put it up, but I didn't want to interrupt.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Rubicon, I hope that means you own a Rubicon Jeep, because Jeeps rock.
My neighbor has one.
By the way, I'm going to do something incredibly douchey. I have been smoking cigarettes for 32 years. I'm just trying to quit, so I'm having to do this stupid vaping thing. I know it's douchey. I know it's terrible, but I need the nicotine. I'm getting off the cigarettes after over 30 years. So you're going to have to excuse me, because I have so much alcohol running through me right now. I need the nicotine.
Oh, don't think these guys don't know that when we get off of here, I'm going to load the glass saxophone with jazz cabbage, and I'm going to go to Mars when we're done with this. I'm going to spend my evening.
I did that stuff when I was younger. I have no problem admitting that. I did that stuff when I was younger. I completely lost interest in that stuff. And now I'm to the point where I don't even like taking painkillers when I can't turn my neck more than 5 degrees. I just don't like putting shit in my body. I don't like feeling out of control. Liquor is about as far as I'll go, but I usually stop when I feel tipsy. I never full on drunk.
I had spent so many years in the military. I stopped. I was in the military, and I was a supervisor, and I was with units that were deployed. And at one time, I was in a unit that was the bottom rung of the Special Forces ladder for the Navy. But the thing is, due to all of that, I do have PTSD, and I have found that actually is so much more effective for me. Yeah. I don't wake up in the middle of the night yanking the sheets off the bed. My wife doesn't have to worry about me waking up in the middle of the night screaming. And it has made a very big impact. She's like, the whole thing was, I quit $100,000 a year job working for the government, doing counter surveillance and things like that, and started my own business. And one of the things that I did was start that. And she was like, okay, do I wish you still made $100,000 a year? Yes. But is there a definite marked change in my personality? Am I easier to live with? Absolutely.
Yeah, you're a really laid back guy. I was surprised, because when you and I first met, it was Aaron Frederick that actually introduced us. And when I found out your military history, and then when you told me a little bit more about it, I mean, you've seen some shit. You've been in the shit, and I know you're not going to get into it. Nobody likes to get into that stuff, but you've seen things that most people can't handle. And
Aaron and I did the same. Aaron and I did the same job on different coasts. Yeah. Like we like to say, I had the exact same job that Aaron had at one point. He was on the East Coast, I was on the West Coast, and then he went officer, and then I got injured and wound up getting sick, and then I got medically retired. But at one point, we were doing the same job.
And it's good that you live in California, where they have legalized it. We still haven't legalized it here in Texas, which is strange. But if you can find a way to reduce that anxiety, to reduce those feelings, and reduce the pain, because I know that you deal with some physical pain as well.
I have an autoimmune disorder, which causes a lot of joint
to be able to
pain
cope with that and not have to spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a year because we don't have free medical. And the VA hospitals I know suck. I know that whole process sucks. I have a lot of friends from the military.
Well, I'm retired, so I actually still have access to nasal medicine. I can go to Balboa
but you can sit down and you can spend a half hour just doing this or eating a couple of edibles and go, the things that were really killing me today are at least the edge is taken off, or some days it may be eliminated.
And then you watch Looney Tunes and just sit.
I think it's a great thing, and I don't look down on anybody that smokes pot or anything else. I'm not like that, but it just never worked out for me because I don't like sometimes out of control. And the thing is, there's a difference between the weed today and the weed 25 years ago when I was a kid smoking it.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I've had people give it to me and I'll try it, and you're sitting on your couch and you just feel like you're sinking into the couch. If you close your eyes for a second, the world is spinning eternally, and you
want something to hold on to.
Onto the floor for dear life.
That's what I was getting to say. You want something heavy to hold on to, so you don't fall into the ceiling.
Exactly, it's crazy shit. I had a friend come back. This was years ago too. He came back from Amsterdam, and he hands me a book. I'm like, motherfucker, you know I don't read. He's like, no, open the book, and inside the book is pressed this amazing shit that he had gotten from Amsterdam, and he's like, smoke it. I'm like, I have no way to smoke this. I'm like, I can't roll a joint to save my life. So I went out and I bought this little glass pipe, little Pyrex pipe. I'm like, I'm gonna try this, not knowing the difference between.
Well, we got to be careful. We can't call it by its actual name. That's why I have euphemisms.
Okay,
it's jazz cabbage, devil lettuce.
Sure. So I load up the entire bowl. And I pack it tight, and it was wet. Packed it as tight as I could. This was enough to get 3 people out of their mind stone. And I smoked the whole thing. And I hadn't done that stuff for probably a decade, right?
Oh, no.
Jesus Christ. I was so out of my mind. And then I slept for a full day after the high disappeared.
So sleepy.
I was like, oh my, by the way, one of the best sexual experiences of my life. But then I slept.
Were you by yourself at the time?
This was my first wife, and she was a little on the crazy side. But it was amazing. But I went, okay, there's a marked difference between what's available nowadays and what we had when we were kids. I'm like, I don't need this. I don't want to feel that out of control, out of my body in my life. Because all you can think of is, because at the time my first son, who he's now 23 years old, he was about a year and a half, and he was with his mom and everything was fine. I wasn't doing it anywhere around my family, but I kind of went, that parent in you kicks in. I'm like, oh my God, what if like my kid got sick in the middle of the night and I had to drive to the hospital? you got that crazy paranoid shit going on. Yeah, I'm like, oh my God, I can't do that anymore. I can never do that again. I never did it again.
So I have to ask you.
Okay. Sorry, I go off on tangents here.
Yeah, I know. So do I. I know. I talk with Mark Begg a lot too, so I know how to wrangle those back in. You've talked to Mark. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Come on, Mark.
His conspiracy theories, by the way, are amazing.
It's not. Yeah, if you want a good evening, I'll get Mark on here some evening, just on a live feed. We won't do it as a podcast. We'll just Mark on here and let Mark go. I just won't be able to monetize it.
By the way, anybody that has any questions, feel free to throw them in so Mike can pull them up. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's thanks.
I am literally an open book right now. You can ask me whatever you want.
So I remember the video, and I
know where you're going.
Do you remember your video where you were talking about this? And I didn't think anything you said was offensive about it, but I remember the 2-part video where you're like, okay,
yep,
like I got this knife in,
but that's
now I have to. Yeah, I was going to say.
I will put my money where my mouth is, and if I'm wrong, I will tell you I'm wrong. That started, because I know where you're going.
Yeah.
That started on Tough Thumb's channel.
When
I remember. Was in his shop, and he was like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to grind the knife. And John Gray was there, and Vance Rhodes, and all that.
I've ground more knives than John Grimsmo.
I have now ground more knives than John Grimsmo. At the time, I did not have a lot of respect for what he did, because I did not understand how much work it takes to be a CNC operator and make knives. So it was funny because John had seen that. And I met him at Blade Show the first year I went to Blade Show. And just like the first time I met Tony Marfione after doing the DOC review with the FU clip, I thought this guy's going to fucking kill me.
Tony, I love Tony. Everybody thinks Tony's a dick. He's another guy that I was like, I like Tony.
Yeah, Tony's a good guy. So John and Eric were two of the, and they were kids back then, two of the nicest people that you would ever meet. And he goes, man, I totally get where you're coming from. He goes, by the way, I have bought a grinder and I am learning how to grind my bevels on a grinder. I said, oh, dude, that's awesome. So what I did was that year, I put out a feeler to find a Grimsmo Norseman. And I said, it's the ugliest knife in the world. It's a CNC made knife. I have no respect for it, but so many people are in love with it. The secondary market was insane. A $600 knife was going for $1,500 routinely. I'm like, I want to see what the hype is about. And I found a guy that sold me his, and I'll never forget, it was the green honeycomb one.
It was the green honeycomb.
He sold me that for whatever the market price was at the time from Grimsmo. I think it was about $600.
I was gonna say at that time they were like about $650, maybe $700.
Yeah. They were going crazy on the secondary, but the guy didn't rate me. I said, great, thank you. I paid my own money for it, bought it from a fellow collector, and I got it, and I made a 2-part video, and I sat there and went, I was fucking wrong. This is a wonderfully made knife. The precision in which this is made, the unbelievably sharp edge, the fact that that goofy looking shape is one of the most useful knife profiles to this day that I have ever used.
I used to because I'm friends with Nick Shabazz as well. I think you know that. I used to pick on Nick, the Graham Razel. I'm like, what the fuck? Why do you like that Graham Razel? Why the fuck? And then I got my first Norseman in for sharpening. I'm like, all right, I understand why the Graham Razel.
You got a recurve that is great for slicing through flesh. You have a rounded tanto tip, which is great for rocking cuts. It's great for slicing through things. There is not one thing that knife does not do for EDC purposes.
It's great. It's probably the most. This is probably the most carried knife in my collection.
And people look at it and go, "Oh, it's so." And I said the same thing. I said, "It looks like it." I made a.
Looks like a horse penis.
It looks like an elephant penis.
Yeah.
But
I think it looks like an angry pelican. But.
It is absolutely, if you've ever looked at a Norseman and went, oh, that thing just looks dumb, put one in your hands and then try to cut anything that you want to cut. There is nothing that knife won't do, period.
Yeah. And people talk about this. Oh, it's cheap garbage steel. I'm like, no, that steel is amazing. No. The nice thing about it is it straps up nice and easy. It takes a really good edge. The edge that I put on them, John asked me to do a video and send him the link so he could show it to people. He's like, and I sent it to him. He's like, oh my God, I've never seen anyone sharpen a knife like that. 1, 2, that has to be dangerous. How often do you cut yourself? And 3, holy crap, that edge looks amazing. And I was like, well, thank you, Jim, thank you, John, on all of those.
And what's funny is and we can love S90V, S125, M4. We can love all those steels because they are fantastic. However, for someone who is really hard using a knife and is continually resharpening, those are a son of a bitch to resharpen. So for the end user, is one of my favorite steels.
But you say that, but like 390. I have a different perspective because I sharpen so many knives in those crazy steels that at this point, like somebody sends me like, oh, I bet you charge extra for 20 CV. And I was like, actually 20 CV is one of the easier steels that I sharpen, to tell you the truth.
It holds an edge well, and it's also easy to maintain. And people need to find that balance. It's great to love exotic steels. There is nothing wrong with being a steel snob if that's what you want to be. But if you're really going to use them and you're going to resharpen your own knives, some steels are far less user-friendly, and you give me 20 CV or M390, and I'm happy as shit.
Maximet is one of those steels. So Aiden asked did you keep the F Curtis or the Hinderer?
Dude, I have gone through so many knives, it's crazy. The F1, and I know which one he's talking about. He's probably talking about the one that Dave made specifically for me with the carbon fiber. No, I did sell that a long time ago, and I do miss that knife. And I've gone through a lot of Hinderers over the years.
I like Rick, but his knives, for my hands, there's something, they never feel. I have one of the fire tacks here, the recurve without a flipper tab, and I haven't gotten a chance to carry it yet. So before you even asked, Russell, I still do have it. I didn't lose it. I didn't sell it, but I just haven't had a chance to put it in my pocket.
Rick Hinder is another one. He and I first met in an elevator on our way to Blade Show, walking from across the street over the overpass, over that I made that Frogger run one day across the 8-lane road, and I never did it again. But we met in an elevator one day, and he heard my voice, and he knew who I was. And I thought he was going to kill me too, because of the Hinderer videos that I had made. And I was very serious about what I had said. They are phenomenal quality. But at that time, it was a $400 knife that you had to pay like $900 to get.
Yeah. I was going to say. So I got mine on the secondary market.
Right. My knives are worth $900.
And I
thought that was amazing.
You had to wrist flick the shit out of it to get it open. I was like, damn.
He's one of the most genuine. Excuse me. I just went through puberty again for some reason. He is one of the most genuine, nice, and honest guys you will ever meet. He and I have become friends over the years, and it was out of mutual respect. I respected his work. He respected the fact that I didn't. I love when people go, "Oh, Jim's just a shill for this and that. If they send him a knife and he does this and that." Dude, I have bagged on so many makers for so many things, and I have to meet these people at some point. And now I'm a knife maker, so it's a little bit different. Rick,
you and I both talked about that change of like things that you were super critical about, and now having made knives are like, I get it. It's not that easy.
It ain't that easy. And Rick, he took all that criticism, and he had no attitude. No attitude. He was so gracious. Rick has bought me drinks at the bar in the pit at Blade Show.
Rick bought me drinks. Ernie Emerson bought me. Even though I bag on Emerson knives all the time, I've never bagged on an Emerson custom. Never once.
I hate Emerson customs. I'll put it right out. I hate Emerson customs.
Well,
Ernie he's a legend, and he's a legend for a reason. But every real Emerson collector will tell you, my knife is nowhere near perfect. It's nowhere near worth what I paid for it.
But the customs are nowhere near as bad as the production ones. And I'm like, Ernie, these knives are not worth this. I was like,
I don't look at the maker and judge them based on their production knives. Never.
Well, but because that's involved. But he's involved in the production process with his knives
to a degree.
Yeah. Rubicon asked, "Do you still have your Stormtrooper Arius?"
Oh my God. I can tell you right now, 90% of what you asked me, if I still have it, I won't, because I've got $10,000 just in my grinder.
Yeah.
Between my grinder, my Moen Platin, all that shit. I have so much.
I've seen the stuff. I saw the stuff. I saw the stuff that you had when you had Travis Wirtz at the shop, and you were looking at all that. That was amazing. Speaking of which, you met Rick Hinderer in an elevator. I met Travis Wirtz on the floor of the casino at USN, and Travis came up to me and he goes, "I know you." And you know how Travis is. Like every time you talk to him, it's like either he drank 6 cups of coffee or maybe just snorted some meth. You're not quite sure which it is.
His mind is in 10 different directions at once.
And he comes up and he goes, "I know you, YouTube guy. Where's the show?" And I was like, "It's around the corner over there." I was like, and I was like, "That's Travis Wirtz. That's why I know that." And he's like, "We'll follow you." And I was like,
Travis is what an actual literal, like Elliot, a literal genius.
Yeah.
And not using that word lightly, and not making fun of it in any way. When you're talking to him, he's designing something in the back of his mind at the same time. It's
doing
crazy how his mind works.
The guys from Even Heat told me there's like, I was like, "Hey, Travis is over here." And he goes, "Can you take him somewhere? He's driving his fucking nuts." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "We've been going across the country with him for like fucking 4 months." And he's like, Travis starts his day with like 2 full pots of coffee. He's like, can you take him somewhere maybe for a little bit? And I was like,
to answer the question directly, no, the Stormtrooper Arius and the one-off, it's funny, the one-off that he made me, that he made a separate, an exact version of that for someone else, for Epic Snuggle Bunny. I know
that's another great channel.
I have neither of those. A lot of my collection was sold both to fund everything that I've done in my shop to make knives, but also through 2020. People don't realize a lot of people panicked in 2020. Shocker. And a lot of knife makers saw their business taper off. People were not spending money on luxury items. They were spending money on, hey, we were all stuck at home. They were ordering
toilet paper. They were trying to find toilet paper. Everyone was trying to find toilet paper.
They were having to spend time with their wives for the first time in a long time.
It's fucking horrible.
So a lot of us that live solely on making knives didn't have the income that we had the previous year. So I sold a lot of my knives to fund my business, to expand my business, and then to even live through a lot of 2020 because I didn't get the benefits. I'm very grateful. I'm not complaining. My income is at a level where I didn't qualify for all those great unemployment benefits and everything else other people got, and I'm happy they got it. I'm not saying anything bad about them at all, but I didn't get those benefits, and I didn't have a lot of orders coming in at the time. I'm booked out for over a year, but at the time I didn't. So a lot of the stuff that I had, I ended up having to sell, unfortunately. I still have a good collection. I'm happy with my collection, and I'm slowly building it back up. But what I'm doing, because I've opened a Patreon account for my YouTube channel, is a lot of the customs that I have on order right now, I'm going to be giving away as prizes. $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 knives that I have on order, I'm going to be giving away for free to people that are Patreons of mine or patrons of mine. So my collection has taken a dip. And I've chosen over the last year to spend a lot more money on my motorcycles and my guns than I have on my knives. But I also we're all cyclical, right? We all go through cycles. We'll spend a lot of money on knives, and we go, oh, wait, that gun caught my eye. I'm going to buy a few more guns. I'm a huge motorcycle enthusiast. My therapy, the only thing that makes me sane is getting out on two wheels and getting out in the wind. So I spent a lot of money on my motorcycles. So I searched out a very special motorcycle last year, and I finally found it, and I got the deal that I wanted. And I've never had a CVO before, and I got a CVO, and so I've spent a lot of money on that stuff, and not so much on my knives. But I'm starting to go back now, and this was the impetus right here.
I want one of those.
They're so cool.
This one is the one that is like, I've joked about it, like, oh, I hate you, Jared, you've made me want to spend I really want one of these. I want one of these. I want a TRM Shadow. And I promised my wife, because she managed to find out how much I spent on the Grimsmo, that I would not spend any more money on knives. And I mean, I know that if I get one of these, I have to sell something else. Problem is that in my entire case, I really don't have anything that I'm willing to part with. I have all of my Ferrum Forges. You know, those hold a special place in my heart because I'm really good friends with Elliot. Several of those were gifts, either from Elliot or from friends like my buddy Tino that's been in here and stuff like that. So I do have to address this one. So Aiden Miguel says, dude, I only paid $400 for an XM24.
That's great.
Aiden, you're talking about now. Jim and I are talking about
7-8 years.
7-8 years, exactly.
Would cost me $900.
Exactly. Like I had an XM18 that I think I paid $800 or $900 for. And
that was the worst. Everybody wanted an XM18.
Yeah.
Everybody.
And I was like, oh man, I can't wait till it gets here. And then it showed up, and I tried to flip it. And I was like, what the this guy said, and I took it apart and I cleaned it up, and I was like, it's just like, you had to wrist flick the ever living shit out of it.
If you're a Hinderer fan and you love Hinderers, but you want a flipper, just buy a Gen 6 tri-way pivot, put the bearings in there, and they flip fantastically. The detent is correct for it. All those adjustments were made, and I made a video about that when they first came out. Rick does listen to his customers.
Yeah,
he made the knife a certain way for a certain reason. These were made for firefighters,
and that's what I forget that sometimes. That's
they weren't made for collectors.
The reason the flipper tab is as obnoxious as it is, and it hurts your hands.
It was an assist.
It was an assist, and so it was. But yeah, he's definitely something. And the thing I love about Rick is he's a fellow Ohioan that has really just made it, and I'm like, that's fucking great. I do have to ask
that there is an elite, okay, and whether you like their knives or not, it does not matter. when a knife maker goes from being a custom knife maker, their aspiration, in many cases, not everybody is driven by money or having a legacy, and that's fine. But there are only a handful of guys. You got Chris Reeve, Rick Hinderer, Mick Strider, and Mick Strider no longer owns Strider Knives. Jason Lee does.
Yeah.
And now Greg Medford and Tony Marfione. Those are the guys that went from making a couple of knives at a time, and people forget, Rick made art knives way back when, not EDC knives, not, flippers. He made art knives. To make that transition from a full-time custom knife maker making a couple knives at a time to pumping out thousands a year in your own self-owned production facility with dozens of employees, 3, 4, 5, 10, 12 CNC machines, that is an extraordinarily rare feat. Yes, they're millionaires, but they worked fucking hard and long to get there.
No Mojo says, mate, the CVO isn't a motorcycle. It's an aircraft carrier on 2 wheels with an in-suite.
Okay, well, you're talking about like a road glide or a street glide. And I got rid of a very high-end high customized street glide. I have a CVO Dyna. There is no luxury to a Dyna. It's a Dyna Super Glide. And they only made CVOs and Dynas in 02, 03, 07, and 08. So it was very hard to find. Mine is the red, and they only made 50 of those, so it was even harder to find. But there is no luxury to a CVO Dyna, and it is not a big bike by any stretch. It just has an enormous motor. But I know what you're talking about. I've had road glides and street glides. I do love baggers. I'm going to be buying a bagger again, but I will never sell my CVO Dyna. It was so hard to find. It was such a labor to get that bike. And the fact that it had so few miles on it, it was basically brand new when I got it, and I got a great deal. That bike I will probably own forever. And the next bagger I get will just be sitting beside it. It will not be traded in for it. And I'm not a Harley. I'm not like 100% Harley guy. I've owned Ducatis. I've owned Yamahas. I've owned Suzukis. I've owned Victories. I've owned a lot of different brands. I'm not a brand loyalist, but this is now my 4th Harley. So I do go back to Harley because I do enjoy them.
I had a fat boy, and I had a fat boy, and I loved it. But I've got so many back issues at this point. Between autoimmune and like just the wear and tear of being in the military. I can't ride anything. It's that whole sitting, and it's just like I have a hard time getting in and out of my Volkswagen. But like I sold it to the guy. He had kept it in his garage for years, and I was like, look, you love the bike. I'll sell it to you I'll sell you the bike for what I paid for it. And I had brought it from Japan.
About living in Florida. I rode 300 days a year.
Yeah.
You had your during the summertime when you had your rainy season, you couldn't ride a lot, but I rode 300 days a year. I live for my motorcycles. I love my motorcycles. It's not as bad as owning a boat, but you're still throwing a lot of money at it.
Yeah, it is. It's a hole that you throw money into.
And it's a lifestyle. I mean, everything I have at some point says Harley on it. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. I get it. But I was the same way with my Ducati. Yeah. There is a whole lifestyle to Ducati as well. But the thing is with Ducati, everything's preppy with Ducati. All my Ducati shirts are polo shirts.
Yeah, it's like they're
Harley
like
stuff. You have every kind of lifestyle. Yeah. You can be casual and comfortable and cool. I do love Harleys, but you know what? I'm looking at that new Indian Challenger is absolutely friggin' amazing.
I was gonna say that would be the other company. I have to ask you a question that I came up with. And I've come up with this question, and I like to ask everyone. The only reason I want to do it is because and I know that you have a limited time frame too. We're at 1 hour and 24 minutes.
I'm good. My battery's about to die, but go ahead.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So I asked Elliot the same question, and this is a really good question. And I like to ask people, especially like really big time knife guys. And I call this the Franken knife question. So if you could take any blade out of any knife, you don't have to try to figure out the geometry and make it work and what, like, you don't have to find a way to pigeonhole it. So any blade from any knife, in any handle from any knife, with any handle material, with any locking mechanism, what knife would you build? What knives would you cobble together to make what would be possibly your perfect knife?
I am a big fan of button locks. I'm a big fan of Brian Ty, and he and I are very good friends. I love his work. I love Rad Olson's work. And those are the two guys that are really doing a lot of work with button locks. I love a good button lock. So I would say a button lock with, as impractical as it sounds, I will always go back to my number one favorite knife that I've ever owned in my life, and that was the Frank Fisher Battle. It's a double recurve tanto with a harpoon. It makes no logical sense. There is no practical use for it. But
it looks like something out of Star Trek.
When you pull it out, people piss their pants. You make a flipper with the action that Frank can do with that blade in a button lock. I would jerk off for an hour.
I remember those battles. Those were insane. So,
oh yeah,
that's nuts. I had done it. And I sat in the house and I was sitting here and I came up with that question just looking at my knife case, and I was like, if I could put the blade from a Reat Horizon D in the handle of a Spyderco Endura.
What?
That handle is
fiberglass handle? What? Why?
No. I mean, no, that shape, that handle shape.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then have it done with like as a like a lockback, like the steel will mini gecko.
No,
like that micarta lockback. It was really smooth.
Why
and then
would
it was
you want
wider?
This is why I don't.
Because it's truly ambidextrous. It's okay. So that steel wheel gecko, or I'm sorry, the steel wheel gecko is possibly the smoothest lockback knife I've ever handled. It snaps open. You could turn that into a fucking flipper.
I love the work that Demco does, but I have no want or desire for a lockback. I know it's a triad lock. I have no desire for a fucking lockback. My very first knife as a child was a Buck 110.
Yeah.
I have experience with lockbacks. To me, I think it's a nostalgic thing, and we all know that nostalgia, like things were definitely not better. Like
when I
your
was
double
a child.
shadow, that is a beautiful example of nostalgia,
right? I love. I was so over the moon when that showed up. I'm like, I got enough points to get this for like $24.
Have you ever met Gilhibin in person?
No, I haven't.
Super fucking intimidating. Super He's one of the, and this is a lot of the old, and I'm not being disrespectful, but a lot of the old timers, okay? Let's say 70-year-old plus that have been making knives all their lives. They will sit behind their tables like this, or they're reading. And Now, I'm not saying he was like that, but when you meet him, he's not overly friendly to every person that walks up to his table. So when I first met him, I'm like, holy shit, Gilhibin fucking hates me. And I go back and I'm hanging out with, at the time, Gene Basket was the president of the Knife Makers Guild. I'm hanging out with him and all of the directors of the Knife Makers Guild because I just presented my first round of knives to get into the guild. And I'm like, did I piss off Gilhibin? They're like, oh no, if you would have just talked to him, you would have seen him light up, and he's the nicest guy. But
Bill Ruppel.
He has what women call resting bitch face.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I gotcha.
He's kind of this, he looks like a grouchy old man until you talk to him. And then he's super nice.
Okay.
And super generous with his time and everything. But the first time I met him, I'm like, holy shit, did I just piss off? You got to realize when I was born in 74, so I was
we're the same age. We're the same age.
I'm a kid through the 80s. You looked at the Sportsman's Guide. What did you see? The Silver Shadow,
the double shadow,
all these Gilhibin.
He had He had that whole fantasy wire wrap series.
He
had
the
throwing knives.
The Rambo 3 knife was the first knife I spent my own money on.
Right.
And
I'll tell you.
And he still makes that knife. By the way, you can get a custom, handmade Gilhibin Rambo 3 knife today.
Right?
He still makes them.
Do you know who I talk to at every one of the custom shows? Like there's one guy that I will run to every time, and people are like, dude, you like talk to that guy? You like just talk, like he just lets you, like you just go talk to him. I'm like, yeah, he's great. Bill Rupel.
Oh,
Bill
dude,
Rupel.
Rupel.
I love
that
Bill
is one
Rupel.
of the funniest motherfuckers you will ever meet.
So I went to Bill Rupel's table one time, and I had just finished. I think it was maybe the 50th knife I had ever made. And I had it, and he was like, "What are you carrying?" And I was like, "Oh, it's just a little knife I made for a friend of mine." And I was like, I was just carrying it because I never get to carry my own knives, and I was coming to the show anyway. And he was like, well, "Let me see it." And I handed him a knife, and he goes, "This is how many?" I was like, 50. And he goes, they say it takes about 400 or 500 knives before you start to get good at it. And when it's 1,000 knives, you've mastered it. I was like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, he's just gonna tear the shit out of it. And he goes, "This is number 50." I was like, around that. And he goes, "I'm curious to see what number 500 is going to look like." He's like, "That plunge." He's like, I've seen machines that don't get the plunge that good." He goes, "That's a good looking knife." He's like, "There's some finishing flourishes you can put on it." He's like, "But overall," he's like, and then I told him, I was like, "Well, Elliot Williamson taught me." And then he goes, "He taught you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, actually, basically what he did was like, okay, here's a piece of steel. There's the grinder. That's how you turn on the ventilation." He's like, "This is how you put a belt on it. And this is how you adjust the belt. Don't fuck it up." Yep. And then walked out. And I was like, all right, I guess we're just going to.
That's what Jerry did to me a lot. He'd be like, "Okay, I'm going to set you up here and I'm going to go have lunch." I'm like, are you fucking
right?
kidding me?
It's the best way to learn how to do anything. It really
Rupel is one of the coolest guys.
Yeah.
Especially in his age group. Funny as shit. You get guys like him and Luke Swenson, Tony Bowes, and those guys together. Number one, the stories, the life that they've lived. Bubba Crouch is another one. You get Bubba Crouch in that group as well.
Tom Mayo. I love talking to Tom Mayo. Tom Mayo is a blast. And everybody's like, "Oh, he just looks like he's so..." Tom Mayo is a freaking blast if you get him going.
Tom is a wild man. And what's funny is when people talk about Tom Mayo at Blade, there's one question, and you might know what this question is. They'll ask, "Is his wife with him this year?" Because
what's under the table? What did he bring for under the table?
He's throwing Sabenzas across the restaurant in the pit to throw them into the wall. Tom Mayo is amazing.
Mayo's a nut.
Here's what's funny about Tom Mayo. I reached out to him probably 7-8 years ago, really when like the TNTs and the Dr. Deaths were at their premium. You know, you were paying 4 or 5 times table price for them. And I reached out to him and I said, "Tom," I said, "you know, I would absolutely love to own one of your knives. Can I get on your books?" And he's like, "Well, my books are closed." He goes, "But I will add you to my books." This was right after he went into remission with cancer.
Yeah.
And he says, "I will put you on my books." He goes, "But I don't know if I'm going to get to your name before I die." I'm like, Jesus Christ, don't say that.
Hey, I mean.
So, and that was like 5 years ago. I'm still probably a good 3-4 years out. I will have a Dr. Death Jr. flipper directly from Tom at some point.
That is awesome. Tom is a great guy.
He is. By the way, if you,
he's got that kid that he. I'm sorry, what?
I'm going to give everybody a little. This is my little gem, my little pearl of wisdom to all the collectors out there that love Tom Mayo knives. Tom loves guns. There are certain makers, if you walk in with a nice bottle of tequila or a nice bottle of rum or scotch, you might finagle your way onto his books. Tom loves guns. If you send him an optic, if you send him a lower, if you send him a gun, you will get on
trigger set, like a Wilson Combat trigger set. Yeah, something like that.
You will get on Tom's books. He is a fan. He's a collector. He's a user. He loves it. That's a good way to get in with Tom Mayo.
Guys, I'm not gonna lie to you. This has been the most fun podcast so far. We've only actually I've only actually used like 3 or 4 of these questions.
Let me look. My battery's at 13%, so I probably have about 20 minutes left.
And that's about what we've got left on this. So I do have to ask you, what is something that people do with knives that makes your skin crawl?
The fucking Spidey flick. It's funny because I was talking about it on this video when I did the Primordial Mark III. It looks like you're throwing up gang signs because you have to open up your palm. You're only holding the knife with your thumb, and you're like,
It's the most fun way to open a knife.
Absolutely, I think it is. It's the dumbest
you know what it is
looking
for me?
thing.
It's the wrist flick. Like I see people wrist flick, and I'm like, at this point, a flicker.
Okay, sure, yeah, I can.
Yeah, that drives me nuts because I was like, and then the just flick, 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 flick. And
Yeah,
I was like,
do that. Don't do that.
You know that knife, if you keep doing that, you're fucking
steel
that lock
stop pin that is set into titanium is going to wear against the titanium if you're throwing that much force against it. Don't do that shit.
Don't do that.
A well-made flipper only needs a finger. That's it.
That's
I agree with you on that. I agree with that.
That one drives me nuts. Yeah. And then using I'm gonna do a video, and I hope my customer Ken, if you're happy watching, I'm not calling you out. Sharpening with a fixtured system and going out and rolling past that edge, and then you get that, like you said, that mirror
rounding off the tip.
And then when you send it to me and I have to sharpen, you've round that tip off, and I look at it and I can see that the whole front of that thing is still mirror polished. And you're like, why don't you just roll it? And I was like, because that's not the geometry that blade was designed at, and I have to rectify that, and I charge extra for it. Because
and it's funny because you actually corrected a knife. The prototype that I made for my Quaken was not as good as the knives, obviously, that I make today. But they weren't even as good as the knives that I made back then. And it had and that was one thing as I loved about you. You were very honest in your critique when you made the video. And I got that knife back, by the way. I got that knife back to correct the issue with the scales not fitting the tang. So it took like 2 minutes and it was done. But it was something that I missed. It should have never left the shop like that.
Yeah.
But you corrected my edge and you evened up the tip. And it was one of the things is as I was going through my progression as a knife maker, I'm thinking symmetry on my plunges, measuring the height on the bevels on both sides and keeping all that straight. The first thing that you don't remember as you're beginning as a knife maker, as you're trying to learn, okay, I've got to try to get my plunges as close to being symmetrical as I can.
Yeah.
And then I've got to get my bevels at the same exact height. And you know me, I like to do swedges as well. So now I've got 4 grinds that I have to keep symmetrical. Back then, what I didn't keep in mind was now I also have to keep that tip, that diamond at the tip, perfectly symmetrical. So I had overgrounded on one side doing the edge. And you had corrected that when you hand sharpened it. And you had called out that my scales weren't flat to the tang, and I corrected that when I got it back from the owner. Thank God. The guy that sent it to you that wasn't the owner was a complete douchebag.
Yeah, the owner I blocked him anyways.
When I blocked the owner, I'm like, please send me that knife back. I want to make that correction. I know where the error was. I want to correct it. And it literally took me 5 minutes to correct it. And he got back a perfect. And every now and then he'll send me a message and go, I still love this knife. I still love this knife. And he owns both of the prototypes for the large and the small Quaken.
And so just to take it out, so there is no question about it. That video got taken down. And it wasn't because Jim asked me to take it down. I took that video down because the comment section got so fucking toxic that it was literally...
Because so many people hate me. It's great.
It was putting my channel in jeopardy, honestly. So Matt Astley asked, I have this question written down. What is your favorite, and I have it written down here, what is the best budget knife out there?
I'll be honest, it has not changed in the 6 or 7 years since I made the video. I still truly believe that the Spyderco Manix 2 is one of the best made sub $100 knife. If you shop around, you can find it for like.
I'll say you're not going to find it on fucking Spyderco for $100 anymore.
It is a fantastic knife. It's a great blade profile. It's a great steel. It is one of the thicker blades that Spyderco has made. It's a great lock. It's a very ergonomic handle. It is a fantastic friggin' knife for like $89, $95, wherever you happen to buy it. Yeah, I'd have to stick with that. If you want to get into like production knives that are in the medium price range, I will always point you to React. whether you're spending $250 or $750 or whatever the price ranges are for however much you want to dress it up. Riat still makes one of the best quality knives, and they changed the industry. I don't know if we had time to get into all that.
No, I've done videos about it that like
they changed the entire industry.
I got rid of custom knives after I got my Microtech DOC that did not have the FU clip. And I got that, and I was like, wow, this knife is really good at 400. And then I got my Riat Horizon D, and I was like, holy shit.
I cut myself
as a matter of fact,
in the video.
Somniome actually has a Riat Horizon D because I pointed in that direction. I was like, that is by far, and I've done videos about it, as much as I love Tim and Ann over at Chris Reeves Knives, and I love the Sebenza, the Horizon D titanium and carbon fiber that I have is by far the best production knife I have ever owned. Ever.
Somnium brings up a great point here on the screen.
Yeah, I brought that up too.
I brought this up in a lot of Facebook groups. People always say, what's the best knife sharpener? What's the best sharpening kit? Listen, fucker. Very few of you have used a knife enough to require an actual new edge. When you put on a new edge, you are removing material.
You wasted 6 months of life on that knife by
the first thing you need to do is strop the knife. That will re-hone. There's a difference between sharpening and honing.
I was going to say, I've done things. If you're above 1,000 grit, you're not sharpening or honing. Yeah. I have some 4, 8, 10, 12,000 grit stones.
Every serious knife collector needs to own a strop and the proper stropping compounds. I use green and white. And I realize it's a very vague description.
You can get by. There are sometimes you can just get by with just straight leather. It does have enough silicates and stuff in it through the tanning compound, or just a piece of balsa wood.
You're taking a very fine, refined edge and you're slightly rolling it when you're using it. Mm-hmm. When you strop it, you'll bring it back to life. It's only when the strop is no longer bringing the edge back to life that then you need to resharpen it.
Yeah. Another great tool, and I brought this up with I forget who I was talking to about it. Might have been Elliot, but a ceramic rod, a ceramic rod for your kitchen knives and for your other knives. That is one of the best ways to just bring that edge back up. You're looking at about a 3,000 grit abrasive. You're not taking off much material. You're realigning that edge. And instead of like
you start hitting that thing with 120, 220, 400 grit stones, you are removing material. You are reducing the life of that blade. Stop doing it.
Unless you've got
don't
chips.
Resharpen it. Strop it.
I don't know if I sent you that sea snake that's in the ARRPM 9 steel. I tell people, I was like, don't sharpen that knife. Like, see what doing strop. And the best thing that I found to strop that with is either straight, just dry leather with no stropping compound, or a block of wood with newspaper wrapped around it. That has been, I can take that ARRPM 9 steel that's in my Rhea or any of my sea snakes, and it could be to the point where you're like, it doesn't even really want to cut paper, and strop that on newspaper and bring it right back up to screaming hair pop and sharp. I've never had a steel that does that.
And I'm not mocking people that don't know. Please don't take it that way. A lot of people just assume my knife got dull, I need to resharpen it. No, don't do that. Get yourself a strop. When Strop Man was around, I believe he passed away.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything.
I have a Strop Man HD, which is a smaller version. It's a two-sided wood strop and leather on both sides, one green, one white compound. Mm-hmm. And all you need is a strop. You can spend as little as $25 and get a decent strop. Strop your knives, watch some YouTube videos, learn how to strop it properly. You don't want to apply a lot of pressure. You don't want to overstrop it. Overstrop it will round the edge more and make it more dull. But if you strop it correctly, you will then bring that edge right back to where it was. It's only when stropping is no longer effective that you take the step to resharpen.
And sometimes you can get away with not actually doing a full resharpening, and you can just take, if you have some really fine stones.
Yeah, very high grit, yes.
2,500 grit stone. And
because you're doing what a strop does at a lower level.
And you're doing it at a lower level, and you're using an actual abrasive that sometimes, especially the other thing too is stropping compound. If your stopping compound has been on there for a long time, it's not like it's diamond. It does break
plugs
down,
up.
and it loses its sharp points, and it kind of, and then you're burnishing your edge.
Yes.
Sometimes just putting new strap compound on will rectify that.
I know you
So
have
that's
a
the best. That's the best budget knife. I think that the only other question I had to ask was, what is your favorite overall knife design? Like, what knife would you say that's out there that is like your favorite? Now, mine is the Grimstone Norseman, and it has been since the first time I got one in hand.
That's a really tough one. That's a good question.
I like to ask tough questions. I'm good at that.
Because most people know that I began life as a knife collector before I became a maker. So I have so much appreciation for so many designs that are out there. And while I can sit there and name off $3,000-$4,000 GTCs and Ron Bests, and I'm going to be perfectly honest, I still truly believe that the Sebenza may still be the most perfect design ever. And let me add to that. What a lot of people don't realize, especially as they're getting into knives, they look at a Sebenza and go, okay, base price, plain Jane Sebenza, $425. Man, that seems like a lot of money for 2 pieces of titanium and an S35, now S45 VN blade.
My first one was in the BG42.
Yeah. And
I had an old one.
Stone-washed finish and this and that. You need to realize that the knives that you see today, the proliferation of stone-washed blades, that started with Chris Reeve.
Yeah.
He created the stone-washed finish. And why was that beneficial? Because people were buying a lot of hand-rough satin, fine belt satin, mirror polished blades, and they were afraid to use them. They'd use them once, they'd get scratched, it didn't look as good. So he created a finish that would take wear and tear and still look mostly like new, because that stone-washed finish would hide the wear and tear.
Well, and it also seals that steel. In fact, like
it does. It's very highly corrosive resistant because of that.
People forget that steel is still very porous.
Yeah,
it really is. Like on a molecular level, it's really porous. And the more you can, that's why polished knives don't rust as easily.
They don't rust as easily, because
they scratch easier.
Steel. Yeah. People forget that amazing hollow grind that he has is not just any hollow grind. Where he terminates that grind, it's thicker behind the edge.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can go through 20, 30 years of use and keep resharpening it, and you will build up to a thinner portion of the edge. Nobody had done that before him.
It's almost like it's like the hollow that you get on a straight razor.
Yes.
But
even more so, because a straight razor is going to go down to its thinnest point.
Well, I mean, you
look at a Sebenza,
double hollow. I'm talking like a double hollow where it comes up and it hollows again.
Yeah.
Which I have some really expensive. I know I don't use them. I had the full beard for a long time, but like double hollow straight razors.
Yeah.
That is an incredible piece of engineering right there.
That's a whole different edge.
Oh, that's insane. And I love sharpening straight razors. It's so relaxing. It just takes forever.
When you get to the fact that it's a frame lock, it was Michael Walker, and people forget this, and they actually don't know this. Michael Walker created the frame lock. I've talked to him personally about this.
Yeah.
His first frame lock was 5 years before the Sebenza. He created the frame lock and the liner lock. It was Chris Reeve that popularized the frame lock.
I made that mistake. Even though I knew it, I make that mistake, and I still say that Chris Reeve is the father of the frame lock. But the fact is, because he's the one that brought it to the market.
He brought it to the masses. He made it popular. And yes, it may lock up at 50%, 80% lockup. It's as strong as it was as the day you got it.
It
is a timeless classic for a reason.
I like to call it. I call it elegant simplicity. Like I know it's a $400 knife, and I know that there's a lot of knives out there that are flashier at the $400 price point. But the fact is, it's so elegant in what it is, and the fact is, it's a work knife.
When you open it, the feeling of it opening is unlike any other knife. Yes, you can flick it, but when you just open it, there's nothing like a Sebenza. And you've got to realize when the Sebenza came out, knives were not made like that.
No.
Today, we can look at a million stone wash finish knives, a million frame locks, a million washer knives that are nice and smooth. But when that came out, it set the standard by which all other knives were then measured. And then everybody wanted to reach that bar. They created their knives based on the Sebenza. So I look at that blade profile. There again, like the Norseman, there's almost nothing that Sebenza blade profile cannot do in an EDC setting.
Well, and
it's a
like
slim
you said,
knife. It's lightweight.
The way it's ground, it cuts so well.
Oh yeah, it's just, and people go, well, it's the Rockwell hardness is only 50. Do you know why the Rockwell hardness is 59 instead of 62?
I do, because I sharpen knives.
Fucking resharpen it.
I was gonna say I do because I know how to I sharpen knives for a living. I know why it's that hard.
It was the first knife that was really in popular culture that was designed to be made to be taken apart, and to be self-serviced and to be self-sharpened.
I was gonna say
that's why it was made the way it was made.
That's one of the things that I love about this knife. They put the thought into it. How am I going to make this as easy as possible for the people to take it apart, clean it, and do all those things? Same with the Sebenza. Like any of the screws can go in any of the holes. You don't have to worry about, oh, I've got like a Benchmade. Oh, I got to fuck around with the pivot so that I don't lose my action, but I can still open it. Like, I want to cut hair too far. And now I still have blade play. And like, what the?
Have you noticed that the more I've drank, the louder I've gotten? And I apologize to everybody watching.
I'm wearing headphones, and I used to work in a 3-story gun. So I guarantee it sounds like I'm in the club.
So I apologize to your viewers who aren't used to people bellowing out.
They're my viewers. They're used to it. I'm deaf as shit.
About knives. I'm passionate about knives. I'm passionate about flashlights. EDC.
That's okay. I wanted to definitely talk about, before you leave, we have to talk about the flashlight. Before the last thing,
the Cylon? Yeah. For those that don't know, I fell into flashlights. A friend of mine named Jerry Todd. I used to go on my videos and go, I don't get these idiots that are buying these expensive custom flashlights. It's a fucking flashlight. I could buy a $35 flashlight that has more power and more throw and this and that. I didn't get it. And my buddy Jerry Todd, he's like, just try. I have a Hanko. I'll sell you my Hanko. And this is when $600 Hankos were going for $850. They're going from now. Because I'll sell it to you for $650. So I bought his Hanko Twisted Trident. That was my first custom. And I got that light and went, oh shit, I kind of get it now. It's very much like knives. But
right? I don't get it. Oh, now I get it.
Don't get knives, that get guns. You go, well, I use my knife way more than I'm going to use my gun. I use my flashlights almost daily. There is something that I'm going to find a use for.
I never lost something
under a couch.
I never understood the EDC flashlight. Like my buddy Nico always had a flashlight. My buddy Tino always had a flashlight. And
once you have one on you, you'll get it.
Right? I got the little one that they had on Mass Drop, the little 3-setting AAA brass LED light. And I was like, that's great. And I got one for my daughter. And then I got one for my wife. And then I became an Olight affiliate and I got the Baton 3, the little one that is just insanely bright. And I was like, I use that more than I use knives all the time. I use little purple dots. I use my flashlight as much as anything else I own. And I'm like, it's nuts, insane. And I was like, how did I go 40 some odd years without a flashlight in my pocket?
It's just like knives. You can buy a $50 knife that will cut shit. You can buy a $2,000 knife that's an art piece that will also cut shit.
Maybe.
Yes. The Cylon, when I fell deep into lights, I was buying $850, $1,000, $2,500 lights. And I fell into it deep. And I went, you know what? I obviously, with my design background, I want to design my own light. And I drew one up. And I shopped it around for 2.5 years. And nobody would do it because of this milling right here. Because they couldn't get
they couldn't get it threaded
and make it line up.
Why don't you just mill it after you thread it?
It still doesn't work.
Oh, no.
So and then all the tritium that I put into this fucking thing. So
I saw the thing like, oh, you want a Cylon, but you don't want to dump that much. Well, we can put the tritium in later.
Yeah. And I didn't want a cheap little spring clip. You could buy $1,000 custom light right now with a little spring clip. I said, no, if I'm spending that much, I want a custom mill clip that goes with the design. So I designed the light. And it was when I had gotten my Eric's F1 from Focus Design Works from Jordy. And I saw his machining, that dragon scale that he does on the light. And I looked at it and I felt the threading and everything else. I went, this is a guy that can take on this challenge. So I said, listen, I said, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to send you a hand sketch that I've made of this light, of these couple lights that I want to make.
It's so sexy. And I want one so bad, but my wife will murder me in my sleep.
And he says, you know what? I think I can do that. Let me play around with it. And he set it up in CAD. We decided to do a trip instead of a single emitter. And he says, yeah, I can do that. And we started the collaboration. Yes, the titanium without tritium is $900. It's not a cheap light.
No.
But for those that collect high-end lights, the Lux RCs, the Tanes, and the things, and the Henkos, you understand the machining is like 15 hours.
Yeah. Well,
that goes into just machining the body of this light.
At this point, knowing so many people that are in like the high-end knife world, like and you and me and everybody, I have to ring a bell here in a second. But like I get it, but holy crap, that thing looks so good, and I just can't justify it. I mean, it's beautiful. It is.
I'm beyond proud. I think Jordy is one of the most talented machinists.
Thank you, Aiden. He says that thing looks like a lightsaber hilt.
It does.
I kind of think that's the direction that Jim. So if you guys don't know, Jim has really big hands too.
Yeah, like, I wear a size XL glove now. I went from a large to an XL.
I wear a triple XL, and I remember you commenting when we shook hands. You're like, "Oh my god!"
There's not a lot of guys with bigger hands than mine. I'm like, as I wear a size 15 ring, I'm like, holy shit, this guy has big hands.
I shook hands with him. He was like, Jesus. They actually, my buddy Tino, if he's still here, can attest to it. They had to order specific gloves for me for the job site because I kept double XL. I was blowing the fingertips out of double XL gloves like weekly, and they're like, what the fuck? I wanted to bring this up. Thank you, Somnion. Thank you. He says this is one of the best lives. Thank you both for an awesome 2 hours. If you're here, be certain to hit that like button. Guys, I think here he is. Here's my buddy Tina. He's like, yeah, we had to order special gloves for Mike.
But yeah, this was a long time in the making. It took
I know it's been
Jordy over a year to do it himself. And
I was gonna say I saw the first like drawings of it, 2 years ago?
Yeah, so close to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's taken a long time. We've sold about 60 or so that are completed and shipped, and there are over 100 people on the wait list. And when you go, anybody that's going to Blade Show West, go to the Focus Design Works table. Jordy is bringing the prototype from my Caprica. So this is the Cylon. This is the mid-range. The Caprica is the high end. And then next year, we're going to bring out the Cylon, a smaller, more manageable light with no tritium, be much more affordable. That'll be in the $500 range. And then for those that have followed me long enough, you may remember that I designed a spinning top with my friend Rich over at Billet Spin. It was called the Infected Specimen. It was the Biohazard logo. Me and Jordy are going to be doing an Infected Specimen light when we're done with the Cylons, the Capricas, and the Vikings.
2A Dave, I'll tell you guys the story after this when we're done talking about
what's broke a shovel mean?
So Tino was talking about they had to order special gloves for me, and then he was like, he broke a shovel, like the metal part. So when I was working on a job site, like the first month I was there, I was digging trenches and I hit a rock, and I'm trying to get this rock, and I'm 6'3". You've met me.
Yeah, you're
I'm
a big
6'3". I'm 230, and I'm trying to get this rock out, and I thought,
did you have bitch tits back then? I'm just asking.
Anyway, so I get underneath this rock, and I'm like, I got to get this rock out. I got to dig this trench. And so I'm like digging, and I just heaved back on this shovel, and I broke the blade not the handle, the metal part. And so the foreman there, his name was Luis. I've got a shovel in my hand and I've got one part of the blade and another part of the blade, and they're in hand. And he walks over, he looks at me, he goes, I never see before. And he takes it from me and he goes, you go plant. And he wanted me to go plant things. And then later I ran out of a job. He goes, you drive a truck? I was like, yeah, I can drive a truck. He's like, fill the water truck. He was like, I don't want to give you another shovel. You're going to fuck something up. Because he was like, if you hit like an irrigation line, we're screwed. Because he was like, yeah, it was an interesting day.
So you've been asking me questions this whole time. I want to ask you a question. What was, whether it was funny or it was gut wrenching, whatever it was, what is the most vivid memory that you have of your time in the service?
Okay, and this is, I'm going to tell you guys a story, and I said this when I did the thing with David Horstman from the Bastards Road Project, which is a veterans mental health thing. I never had an issue with any of this stuff. So the most gut-wrenching thing for me, like I was on combat deployments.
Oh, you're going on the serious side now. Okay.
Yeah, my PTSD never came from that. And so the most gut-wrenching thing that ever happened to me was where the actual PTSD came from. I elected to do the humanitarian relief for when they had, if you guys remember, not after the big tsunami that hit Japan. This was the big one that hit Thailand that time. And I was like, all right, I'll volunteer. I'll go help. And so I went, and because the big tsunami that hit Japan, I was already retired, this last one. And so I went, and when I got there, I'm thinking, how bad could it be? We're going to do some cleanup. It was water. It's a wave. You don't understand the magnitude of these things until you get there. And so I show up, and if you guys can see, I have goosebumps just thinking about it. So I show up, and it's just insane. There are bodies in trees. There are bodies in buildings. There are bodies everywhere. And as I walk in, as we come off, we're in this area that we're supposed to be helping with the cleanup and all these things. I'm like, who's doing barbecue? Because all I could smell was barbecue pork. It was so wet and it was so nasty. They couldn't bury bodies, and they were burning bodies. And that moment, I was so physically sick, and my brain just could not accept what I was observing.
Yeah.
And there was like about 5 years I could not go by a barbecue place without physically becoming sick.
Oh my God.
And that was the most gut-wrenching thing. But the flip side of that was the friendships that we built with everybody that was there, from other military branches, from other military services, from other countries, the aid workers that were there, was incredible. So while it was one of the most gut-wrenching things, it was probably one of the most rewarding things I ever did in my life, even though to this day I still have nightmares about it. I would have to say that while I can say that it was probably the worst experience of my life, I can also see how valuable it was and what we did, and so how rewarding it was on the backside. So for everything that you get in life, there's a little bit of a backside to it. Like there's not everything is perfect. So when you do something that you feel is rewarding to you emotionally, there's always going to be some downside to it, and that's mine. So
that's the one thing that really has lived with you.
Yeah, that's the one. Like no matter what like the combat stuff, I get, like that was why I was in the military. That was my job, and a lot of people say that's cold and that's callous and things like that. I actually have taken life. The fact is, that's not what ever bothered me. That's not what the one that bothered me was the complete and utter devastation and loss of life.
Seeing innocent people that never expected that sort of thing to happen.
Exactly.
Their lives that's snuffed out like that
in a second.
Yeah.
And like you see the videos of the people, like if you go back and you find the videos that people put online, people go, oh, look, the water's so far out. And now in retrospect, me knowing what happens, I'm like, I can't watch. And I think I was talking with my sister about this. I now have a weird phobia. All the years I was in the military, swam in the ocean, scuba diving, snorkeling, swam in the middle of the Indian Ocean, out where you couldn't see land in any direction. Now I have this weird phobia of the water. Like I can't do deep water. Like I can't swim in the ocean anymore. And I think I honestly think that's where it comes from.
I can certainly respect that, and I see where that would. I mean, that can affect you on a daily basis. I think there was a very sobering moment for a lot of people that never had that sort of experience, that never has served in the military, that's never been in law enforcement or emergency medical services, has never seen things like that. And when we watched, and we're coming up on the 20th anniversary, oddly enough, 9/11.
Yeah.
There was a certain degree of gravity, all right, to the whole situation. But it was when we watched people jumping.
Yeah.
Realizing that I just got the same feeling. Watching people that made that conscious decision that went, I'm either going to suffer by burning to death, or I can die quickly by jumping out of this building.
It's a really hard decision.
When you're watching it, because we watched it live as it happened, watching people make that decision. And there was a really great documentary that was made years ago about it, right after it happened. But it was an unflinching documentary, and they had video of the bodies hitting the ground and coming through the promenade, and hearing over and over those bodies hitting. I think it was a real emotional awakening for a lot of people that will never experience any kind of battle trauma or anything like that, to see with their own eyes innocent people having to make that decision and their lives being snuffed out in an absolute instant. I think it's a harrowing experience. I think everybody in the country that lived in that time, that was old enough as they were watching it to process that, I think we all live with something in our minds, and when we're reminded of it, and we're going to be reminded of it a lot this month, a lot, and we're going to see a lot of that footage again, and it's going to come flooding back to us. It pales in comparison to what you've seen and what other veterans have seen and have gone through, but there's that little bit that helps us understand, for maybe the first time in generations, is we never saw that stuff happen on TV.
No.
We never saw that stuff being given to us. We watch people take their own lives and hear that sound. I'll never forget that sound of the bodies hitting the ground.
I was on duty.
Life-changing.
I was on duty that night. Like, I was a section leader for the harbor security unit. Like, that was our duty. We stood harbor security, and we had patrol boats. I was on duty that night, and I got a call from one of the kids. He was like, hey, he had said earlier, he's like, hey, I'm going to go back to my room. I need to grab stuff so I can come back, take a shower, and sleep in the bunk room. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. You're just across the street. Take a radio. And so I get a call on the radio. I was like, hey, tune on AFRTS, which was Armed Forces Radio and Television Network. And so I turn it on, and that was the first tower had already been struck. And then the second tower got struck within the first 45 seconds of me turning on TV. And I was like, what in the fuck is going on? And I was like, there's a pissed off air traffic controller. And then it sunk in. I was like, and I got a hold of everybody. I was like, I woke everybody up. I was like, this is some no shit. Get your guys, get a hold of everybody, start calling everybody, tell them to get dressed. And they're like, what? And I was like, we're going to go to Delta. I was like, I give us 15 minutes. And so everybody's getting up, and I was like, start calling people, start waking them up, tell them to get ready, tell them it's not a joke. Don't fucking piss around at this. Get ready and get ready to go to work.
Yeah.
And as I'm saying, within 5 minutes, the command duty officer he walks in, he goes, we're going to Delta, call everybody. I was like, on it. We're already doing it. We're on it. I was watching the news. So
yeah, I think it gave a lot of very regular, ordinary people a very, very small, a tiny bit of insight into what our first responders, our military, our police see on a regular basis. And
always.
And people don't understand how much that can affect your daily life, and it will affect you the rest of your lives. I mean, I know guys that literally wake up and their wives are on alert to not come near them, because when they get up, they could kill them. You know,
my wife knows. I wake up and I yank the sheets off the bed, and I'll wake up and I'm fighting with my CPAP, and I've got the sheets wrapped around me, and she looks at me, are you okay? She's standing next to the bed. because
people
she's
don't
been up for
realize
like
how
10 minutes. She already knows.
that can be. It's a life-altering thing, and you can't control it. It
My
is
daughter.
what it is, but you did it. And not everybody had a full understanding of what their life would be afterwards, but most of these guys are guys that went into it knowing this is the life that I choose. You know, and I'm going to go. I'm going to stand for my country. I'm going to protect our freedoms. I'm going to help our allies. I'm going to help people. That the whole thing with Afghanistan right now, people don't get is we helped people that could not help themselves. Yeah. And if we don't do it, the world is taken over by absolute evil that will spread to us. That is how the terrorism came to us on 9/11. So I have the utmost respect for the men and women that have put their lives on the line. The 13 that just died last week, senselessly. And I don't want to get into a political rant, and I probably won't. I have 2%, 1% left on my battery. I have about 5 minutes left. I'm not going to get political, but I do want to say for those of you that are watching that have, and for Mike, you as well, that have put your lives on the line, people don't really understand what that means. I have a personal friend. We all saw that documentary about Restrepo. I had a friend that was there, and I listened to the stories and what they went through all day fucking long, and how you carry that home, and that's going to live with you the rest of your lives. It's not just about putting your 4 years in. You know, it's not just about becoming an officer and hoping to get a nice payday and a desk job someday. It's what you go through if the need arises, and the need has arisen too many times in the past 25 years. And for what you guys have done, I thank you, and I thank all the veterans that have done that, because you allow guys like us to do stupid shit like talk about knives on the internet.
Well, I like to say, I get people that thank me for my service all the time. And I seriously, honestly, I appreciate it. But the fact is, no one has to thank me. I loved every fucking minute of it. I loved every minute. I had a job. Like, I would tell kids, they're like, should I re-enlist? And I was like, maybe you should re-enlist. But this is another statement I make that just even thinking about gives me goosebumps. I'm like, I want you to think about, if you don't re-enlist, you currently have a job where you work in a 3-story gun that fires a 72-pound projectile at twice the speed of sound for 13 nautical miles, whose impact is associated with a bright light, a loud noise, and a rapid going away of things. Can you do that in a civilian world? And they're like, I'm fucking re-enlisting. I loved every minute. I had, Jim, I had a room full of full automatic machine guns that had my name on the door. You don't get that in a civilian world.
Yeah.
So you guys don't have to ever thank me. I loved every minute of it. It was my pleasure.
Well, I'm glad you're able to do it. I didn't make it through. My life was to be a Marine. That was what I was supposed to be. That was, I went through the ROTC and everything. And unfortunately, I didn't pass MEPS. And that's just on me. I got in 3 car accidents in 1 year and fucked my shit up. But it was something that I wanted to do. And I'll be honest, there's a big part of me that's thankful that I didn't go through that, because I was going in at a time we were going from Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and I know
you and I are the same age, so that would have been around the same time frame.
Yeah, that wasn't as big of an incursion as what we're seeing, what we've seen later, but it's still, I don't know what would have happened, to be perfectly honest, but yeah, I've met a lot of guys with big ass balls made of brass that clank when they walk. And there's a reason for it. And yeah, you guys rock. I hate to get off of here, but I'm at 1%.
I know. And we're
what
at
I don't
2 hours.
want is for it to go black while you're talking about something important. But thank you, man. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you, Jim. I love this. Maybe we can do this again sometime. This has been great. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and I'll let you go, because I know your thing's about dead, and I will do the outro with everyone. I appreciate it again. This has been fun. Maybe I'll get are you going to be at Blade Show West?
No, but I will be at Blade Show in Atlanta for certain, and I will be at I have to be at the Guild Show, the Guild Show. But I will be in Blade at Atlanta, and I will be bringing knives and flashlights.
Nice. All right, Jim, thank you very much, and I will see you soon.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you.
Guys, So this has been a blast. Like, go back and say, if you guys are listening to this on Apple Podcasts, definitely go and find the actual video of this, because Jim showed some stuff that's pretty cool. I'm going to get off of here. So those of you that are watching, we may do, would you guys like to do a after show? If you do, I'm probably just going to go ahead and put it up. Just let you guys know it's probably going to be about 30 minutes from now. And we will just meet up in about 30 minutes or so and just hang out. So I do have to eat something. I have not eaten anything today. So, all right, guys, I love you all. Thank you all for hanging out. And go check out Jim's webpage and his knives. He does amazing work. So I will see you guys next time.